Okay, we have our slides up. And for those folks that are logged on online, just wanted to let everybody know in case they didn't see the message that we're having some technical problems. It appears you can hear us, but we will not be able to hear folks connected remotely. So you'll need to put your comments in the chat box, and I can convey that to the commission on your behalf. Apologies for the inconvenience. With that, I think we are ready to start.
And on that technical point, Mr. Tiso, if you could issue that reminder from time to time, or maybe at the beginning of each new item, the reminder to type instead of speak, or however else you want. I want people to have the maximum opportunity to communicate with us. Okay, so we'll get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to the March 12th, 2026 meeting of the Baltimore City Planning Commission, meeting number 2087. I'm the Commission Chair, John Laria. Welcome. Sorry for the slightly late start. Hopefully some of you got to learn a bit about other things while waiting for your items, and that was of some use. I wanted to start today, if I might, by acknowledging that to my right sits Ren Southard, who has been appointed by Mayor Scott as the Acting Director of Planning. Tim Keene, who began his tenure as the Director of Planning in September, has been now appointed by the mayor, and I'm sure most folks know this, to be the Commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development. And we're very excited to have Ren return to the Planning Department, where she spent a portion of her career. Ren has experience in the private sector as a practicing architect. She's been in the Planning Department. She has been, till recently, in the Department of Housing and Community Development, working on matters. And especially in view of the fact, and I know she'll say something about this, that the mayor has asked Tim Keene and Ren to work together on a strategic realignment of the two departments, including a merger of the departments after an appropriate study period. Ren brings a unique perspective, both professionally to the things that the Planning Department is doing, as well as to the common issues, and there are many common issues in the Department of Housing and Community Development and the Department of Planning. So she's the perfect person to be here at this point, and I think I know from the staff, folks are happy to have her return home, and we welcome you, and I wanted to give you the floor for some comments, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the warm welcome back. I would just like to express my appreciation. And as noted, I'll be working very closely with the new Housing Commissioner, Tim Keene, who you all know from his recent post as the Planning Director here. He and I are really interested in advancing a lot of the work that's already been done here in Baltimore. There's been years of plans, lots of ideas. There's a ton of development potential in the city, and potential to advance the city, both in the residential number of housing units and also our commercial green space. So I'm looking forward to doing that with Tim and to undertaking the study that the mayor has entrusted us with. And just thank you for your contributions here already, and I look forward to joining the commission.
Thank you, and I'm going to ask the Deputy Mayor if he has anything he'd like to say on behalf of the Mayor and the Mayor's office.
Well, just that we're so thrilled for Ren to take this role. We've obviously been a public servant for many years. So when the opportunity came to ask you to do this, it was so easy. And frankly, to give everybody a little bit of color how this went down, when I had a conversation with Tim about the concept of him going to be the housing commissioner at the mayor's request. And I said, well, who do you think could lead planning while we do this? And the name he mentioned was the name that John Laria had also mentioned many times before. So it was an obvious choice. And watching you work with Tim and with the team up until now so far, it's very clear that the city's got all the right folks going in the right seats, and we've got a great direction, and I'm just really excited about the team that's coming together.
Thank you very much. I might have done the roll call before that, but I'll do it now. Mr. Tiso, would you take the roll for the commission, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Robin Allen?
Present.
Councilman Bullock?
Present.
Christine Griffin is excused but may join us remotely later. Claudia Jolin?
Present.
Doug McCoach,
Present.
Calvin Young,
Present.
Eric Stevenson,
Present.
and Chair Laria.
Present. We have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from February 26th. Is there a motion to approve those minutes, please?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. We have two items on the consent agenda. CIP transfers are first, and as we have become accustomed to, for those items on the CIP transfer list that are listed as not consistent with the CIP, which is not a negative, it is simply a description of the fact that the CIP has certain categories and sometimes things move around. For those categories, we've asked the staff to just give a very, very brief summary, more details available on the public site, and the commissioners have it in front of them as well. Would you please?
Hi, Commissioners. Leah Dubats, the CIP Supervisor. We have 3 transfers today that are listed as not consistent with the CIP. The first transfer is in Housing and Community Development, and this is a $900,000 transfer to cover a shortfall in an urgent demolition account, and this is an administrative correction. There was an error that took place during the migration from City Dynamics to Workday in 2024. The second transfer is also in Housing and Community Development. This is for $1.3 million. And this is for costs incurred in the emergency demolition of several large buildings in the 200 block of West Fayette Street and 100 block of North Howard Street, resulting from the massive fire in September 2025. And staff recommends approval as this is a reimbursement from the Baltimore Development Corporation for those demolition costs. And then the third transfer is for $663,496. And this is to reimburse HCD for costs incurred in the emergency demolition of several large buildings, again in the 200 block of West Fayette Street and the 100 block of North Howard Street, resulting from the September 2025 fire. And staff also recommends approval of this transfer since it's a reimbursement from the Baltimore Development Corporation for demolition costs incurred.
Thank you, Leah. Are there questions of staff about either those or the other items listed on the CIP transfers? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the CIP transfers?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item on the consent agenda is a minor subdivision of 4404 Edmondson Avenue. Is there a motion to approve that item on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're moving to the regular agenda. The chair is recusing himself on item number 5 on the regular agenda, and I'll turn this over to the vice chair. And then the executive secretary presumably will call it.
Thank you, Ms. Executive Secretary.
Item number 5, City Council Bill number 26-0150, zoning conditional use retail goods establishment with alcoholic beverage sales, variances 600 West North Avenue in the 7th District. Austin Davis will present.
Good afternoon. Aha, good afternoon, everyone. Let's see if I can get this to, where do I have to point? Oh.
Shouldn't matter, but just over the top of the.
Alrighty, great. I am Austin Davis, and I'm presenting 26-0150. This is, as Ren stated, a zoning conditional use for a retail goods establishment with alcoholic beverage sales and a variance at 600 West North Avenue. And I have some pictures of the site just to give some context. This is really... It's never been this bad before. Okay, there we go. Here's our aerial overhead. Site is outlined in teal. Here's a northeast look to give some more context. And then I have the current zoning map. We can see it in C2 with some surrounding R7, R8, R10. And then I also have the general land use map up to see that we have it as a mixed-use, predominantly pedestrian-oriented commercial parcel. And here's the site plan. And I might have to come back to the site plan as I kind of go through both the staff report and the findings of fact. to kind of explain the yellow shading, but we'll get into that as more information came from the applicants after the staff report, and then we just want to make sure that everything's on the same page. So I'll get back to that in a little bit.
Should be talking right here, but.
Okay, here we go. So just going to start with some history, and this is both history for the site and for the kind of overlapping large redevelopment of the North Avenue Western Corridor. So back in the mid-2010s, the Madison Park North area was identified for large-scale, mixed-use redevelopment, housing, public spaces, neighborhood retail, et cetera. MCB Real Estate in 2018 was able to assemble around 8 acres of properties and areas along this corridor and began the next phase, or the first phase really, of the Madison Park / Reservoir Square redevelopment. And in 2021, we saw some state legislative action where the West North Avenue Development Authority was established. I believe they also received their first of 2 state funded grants to help kind of continue the planning, the development, everything of this project. And then as we continue into the 2020s, then development began in 2022 of Madison Park North. There's roughly 120 townhomes and new streets. The original street grid was redesigned, reallocated there. 2023 was the second round of state funding that I alluded to. I believe is $500,000 to WNADA to support housing, economic development, et cetera. In 2025, the project site that we are here today was acquired by MCB Real Estate and they announced plans for a grocery store and supporting retail. And as it stood and as it stands now, the site is a improved vacant daycare center. And in 2026, this is when the City Council Bill 26-0150 was introduced, and this is where we are now. So, as I mentioned, the site is designated community commercial. It really supports, the idea of neighborhood serving commercial uses along a major corridor. And as I stated, the goal is to develop a grocery and retail for the area rather. And I mentioned Streets Market as the grocery store, maybe I haven't, and then a multi-tenant retail building with associated parking and site improvements for the 600 West North Avenue parcel. The conditional use would apply to a single tenant space within the grocery store building, and this is kind of my first, the highlighted image that we saw on the 5th slide. And then redevelopment supports the healthy food environment strategy, which is from within one of our major comp plans. And we believe that this will improve access to healthy and affordable food. Introducing a full service grocery store in an area that's historic limited is obviously a good thing. So first I'm going to go through the conditional use approval standards, bear with me, but I'm going to go through each one of them. And as it stands for the alcoholic beverage sales. So the nature of the site, the redevelopment, for the grocery store and multi-tenant building all along this major commercial corridor, staff sees that this is acceptable. The project includes on-site parking and internal circulation designed to support the grocery store and retail uses. Staff has recommended to encourage the use of metered or on-street parking to avoid people from camping on the spots designated for North Avenue. There's kind of precedent as you go throughout North Avenue on both the north and south sides where you see the little cut-in and metered parking around commercial. And then in terms of the surrounding area, there's a mix like we saw on the 3rd map of residential, commercial, even open space a little bit to the south along the North Avenue corridor. In terms of nearby community uses, it's pretty clear that there is a large amount of residential nearby, and so the limited amount of commercial space near them, this is a solid fit. Going through emergency access, the proposed site design includes internal drive aisles and whatnot. I believe the fire department approved their design. Light and air, this will not alter any building massing, site layouts, or anything like that. Utilities, infrastructure, adequate utilities, road access, drainage, et cetera, has been provided, and this project will not affect any designated cultural or historic landmarks. Going through, this clicker is really not agreeing with me today.
Let's change them out.
Yeah, we might have to. The battery's probably dying. Great. As we continue down, neighborhood character, once again, this proposed retail use is consistent with the commercial character of North Avenue. Within the comp plan, like I've already mentioned, there are a few places that we found that staff found that this supports, especially with the the stated access to goods and services via grocery store. There's no applicable urban renewal plan, excuse me. This is compliant with the zoning code, given its, variances once approved. And the intent and purposes of the code, this supports it, and redevelopment is, within the general welfare of the surrounding communities. Next, we'll go on to the variance approval standards, and I'll read through all of these as well. So staff's required finding was practical difficulty. The site occupies a highly visible location along North Avenue, immediately adjacent to 83. So, within the larger redevelopment area, this parcel represents one of the few undeveloped sites capable of accommodating a full grocery store and its associated retail site. So I think this is a pretty key finding that staff was able to, look at. If we go along the corridor, where realistically could this go? How can it possibly be supported? This parcel is pretty ideal in that. The project includes approximately 17,000 square feet of retail, which includes that grocery store. A portion of that grocery building will be used for the alcoholic beverage sales, a wine shop, I believe. And then because the site is along a major arterial corridor that's adjacent to 83, there's a lot of traffic that goes through there. This would be expected to attract higher vehicular activity than a typical neighborhood retail use. Strict application of the zoning code's parking maximum would limit the ability for the site to accommodate the anticipated customer demand associated with the grocery store and supporting retail uses. Additionally, with regards to the front yard setback, they are requesting this, for better pedestrian circulation, landscaping, and outdoor dining opportunities associated with the multi-tenant retail and restaurant that will be on the west portion of the parcel. The setback, like I said, will create a more active and pedestrian-oriented frontage along the corridor, kind of consistent with both the broader revitalization efforts within the Winata plan, but also within the city's plans. Staff finds that the requested variances meet the additional findings required under Article 32, subsection 5-308, and the practical difficulty is caused by the application of zoning code, not actions of the property owner. This request is, is not intended to increase property value, but to support the redevelopment of this long vacant site, and the variances will not negatively impact the surrounding properties or diminish neighborhood property values. Also, staff finds that this request is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the zoning code, which encourages appropriate commercial development along major corridors. The variances are consistent with the comprehensive master plan, do not conflict with any urban URPs or historic districts, and they will not endanger public health, safety, or welfare, and are not contrary to public interest. In terms of equity, as I've stated many times, the redevelopment of this long vacant site on West North Ave is good. The introduction of a full-service grocery store and neighborhood-serving retail will improve fresh access daily goods for the immediate and further communities. It supports revitalization of the North Ave corridor. It adds a highly visible gateway, right after you get off of 83 into the community. And finally, the development may provide local employment opportunities through, obviously, the grocery and retail jobs. In terms of community engagement and notification, the broader West North Avenue corridor redevelopment has been involved in extensive community engagement over several years. The applicant presented the project at multiple community meetings last year and early this year, and planning staff has also attended those meetings related to the proposal. The Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association, Reservoir Hill Association, the Reservoir Hill Improvement Council, and the Bolton Hill Community Organization have all been notified of this action. As far as internal operations, planning staff has reviewed the proposal through the Site Plan Review Committee SPRC process. The proposed legislation does not create any significant operational impacts for the Department of Planning, and staff review has occurred as a part of standard legislative and development review process. And as it stands, our recommendations are approval and with the following amendments. And they are to insert a portion of immediately before 600 West North Avenue in the bill title, to revise the legislative purpose statement to read, and I quote, on a part of the property known as 600 West North Avenue as shown in yellow on the accompanying site plans. The third one is in section 1, revise the 18th line to read in part, and I quote, on a portion of the property known as 600 West North Avenue as a portion of the grocery building as shown in yellow on the site plan accompanying this ordinance. And for 4, to replace the site plan dated January 13th, 2026, and used in lieu and plat, the one referenced in this bill and in this PowerPoint dated today's date, showing a proposed retail goods establishment with alcoholic beverage sales designated tenant space within grocery building. And these recommendations come from the precedent that we in the Department of Planning have in terms of dealing with these alcoholic beverage sales conditional uses, because we could either grant it to the entire site, we can grant it to portions of the site, buildings, or we can grant it, as I have here, kind of the highlighted square footage within one of the buildings. And so we went with option 3, and we have it designated. I don't know if this laser pointer works. Oh, you can't see it. Well, we have it as if you can't zoom in, but on the grocery store building on the left, you'll see there is a delineating line between the majority of the grocery store, and then it's labeled wine shop. That's a roughly, I think it's like 1,900 square feet. The grocery store is around 12,000. So, we can use these measurements, and this is, one way of doing it. It can be limited just to the wine shop. However, the applicants have informed us that they would like it to be for the entire grocery store building should legislation move forward that would allow alcoholic sales at grocery stores. However, currently as it stands, this is kind of like the Harris Teeter Canton. So, there's a beer and wine shop attached to it. I think the Streets in Greektown also has one. So that is all I have, and I will turn it over to the commission.
Thank you, Austin. Starting with the commission, any questions for the staff, Councilman? Commissioner Allen?
Just, no questions, just a long time coming.
Yes.
Commissioner Jolin?
I need to hear more. I do not.
Okay. Commissioner McCoach? Deputy Mayor?
No, sir.
We're going to hear from the applicant in a moment. I guess my question for now is, could you just speak to the variances, specifically the off-street parking maximum and how it's calculated?
Yeah, so the variance is for, I believe, 81% in parking. And as far as the site is concerned, there was extensive discussion during SPRC as it relates to kind of tree removal on the site and orientation of spots. And so in order to both accommodate the needs of the tenant for the grocery store and allow for an adequate circulation model, the variance was requested so that they could both sign the lease for the spot, so the Streets Market would agree to it. They said they needed this, is how it penciled out. And in order to just make it so that it's navigable and so that not as many trees could come down, this was the this was the design that the applicant came with, and the variance is to support primarily the internal spots on the site.
I guess the reason for my question is that when I look at this, the parking lot does not seem out of scale with the building. So can you explain to me the logic and the math behind the code?
Yeah, well, they just changed it, so now it's much smaller. And I believe if you want to extend past the minimum, it's what, you got to go like double. Is Brandon in here? I know Brandon handled the SPRC and was dealing with them a lot more with regards to the parking calculation. If I could tap in
Sure.
let me tap in Brandon here.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I would have dressed up a little more if I thought I was actually going to get tapped in, but Austin warned me this may be the case. So the parking maxima now are calculated based on the square footage of the uses on the site total. So that's not just the grocery store, it's all the retail stuff combined. Where that maximum landed after the code updates back in December is, like Austin had mentioned, about 83% below where the applicant has proposed it currently. This was an active debate, and obviously professionals can disagree, so I don't want to speak to the applicant's argument on their front. Obviously, they're here to discuss it at their leisure, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, I think that's sufficient, and just to kind of restate the numbers that are in the proposal so we understand what we're dealing with. This plan has 65 parking spaces, but the code based on the square footage
Would be around 30-something.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Knoy. Austin, just one more question. There was a slide somewhere in your presentation that had this satellite image of the existing conditions, which I think is the previous conditions, because that's been demolished now. So it looks like the proposed parking lot is kind of similar to what was a paved area in the back, and the new building.
Yes.
Is like a similar footprint to what was there before. Okay, and then the one other variance was the setback. Could you
Yeah,
speak to
the
that
front
real briefly?
setback. Yep. And so, I wish I could zoom in, but on the front of the street, I believe it's not a very large variance requested, but it is to allow for more pedestrian space, give them a patio access. Staff felt that this variance kind of makes sense, especially if we're taking out that lane to add in the parking. So this would kind of give back a little bit more pedestrian circulation area. I want to say it's like 20%, but I don't think I actually have it listed. But it's pretty small.
Okay, great, thank you. If there's no further questions from the commission for Mr. Davis, I'll invite the applicant to come up, please.
Hi, everyone. Drew Tilden of Rosenberg Martin Greenberg. I'm joined today by Dory Farley from MCB and as well as Campbell Burns from Streets. Thank you so much, Mr. Davis, for that thorough presentation. I think there are a couple items that I can just clarify to start with. So first, the daycare, I think as we've discussed, was demolished. But if we can move back to the aerial, I can do it. Backwards. But I do want to confirm, the parking area is about where that already is. So to the extent possible, we're not expanding the parking area. Also, to address the grocery store question, so it's exactly what you said. In the event that at some point the legislature finally passes the law that allows grocery stores to sell alcohol, because this is really going to be operated all by Streets, it would make sense to be able to spread the alcohol aspect of it across the entire footprint. Also just to go through the basis of the parking variance, because we understand that it's pretty substantial. The retail goods establishment definition includes everything that is selling anything. So that includes within, certain footprint constraints, because there's now small box retail goods establishments. But that means that if you were to have a candle shop, it would require the same amount of off-street parking as if you were to have a grocery store. Now, those two uses obviously have very different needs in terms of parking. One is higher volume and there's high turnover, whereas a candle shop is a smaller volume, obviously, with fewer amounts of cars and less turnover. Obviously, there's also the fact that in terms of a grocery store, you're buying heavy things that you need to walk with. And I can address that as well. I submitted a memo to the file that gives just a little bit of a rundown of the considerations that go into this. So first of all, the industry standard for parking for grocery stores is 5 per 1,000 square feet. And this is something where grocers don't want to sign leases. So if we want to bring grocery stores to Baltimore City, we need to meet the market demands because again, these national grocers, even smaller grocers, are not going to want to sign leases where they're not going to be able to meet the needs that are consistent with industry demands. But we were lucky enough that we were working with Streets and they were willing to, what was initially proposed was 75 off-street parking spaces, and we were able to bring that down to 65 spaces. So we're very lucky to be working with a committed community partner. But I think there's a general kind of discrepancy between the zoning code requirements and what the reality is for grocery store needs. But I've also submitted sort of an exhibit in here that outlines why it is that we need these 65 off-street parking spaces and really why we would have needed, for the grocery store and then combining with the retail, 68 to up to 87. So if you take a look at sort of how Streets anticipates its operations to look, it's going to be about 550 customers per day, and their peak hours are every day between 4 and 8 p.m. Then we look at the surrounding area and the number of households that there are within. It's about a quarter-mile distance is what they refer to as the walkable distance that you can anticipate for somebody going to an amenity. So if you look at the households in that area, there are a little over 18,000 households. So you can pull the 18,000 households and we can try to go through a daily walkable percentage of those 18,000 households. That gets us to about 260. But then we look at it into another place, and so, you go to the households that are walkable, divide it by 7. So that's if every single household that lives within the walkable distance is going to walk to the grocery store. That takes us to about 260 customers per day who are going to theoretically walk to the grocery store. But then if we look at the average commuter numbers, 55% of these households are commuting. Now, if the rush hour time in the grocery store, when 70% of the people who are coming in is around rush hour time when people are getting off work, they're driving home. They're not going to go home and then walk to the grocery store as a practical matter. So we pull all of those people out as well, and you lose a ton of that walkable character you lose the likelihood that people are going to walk and get their groceries to the extent that it's going to make it so we don't need all of these parking spaces. So this is not a number that is pulled out of nowhere. I think we look at this area and it is fairly dense. It's an R7, R8 community, but it is not like the Streets grocery store that we see in Charles Center. It's not the Streets grocery store that we see in Charles Village, where they are surrounded by high density either office buildings or they're surrounded by apartment buildings, they're surrounded by dorms, and they are also on strips that are highly trafficked and traveled because there are a ton of other commercial amenities in the area. So these needs really are distinct from what we see in these other locations. I think also just to go to the variance standards, I think Mr. Davis was very thorough in addressing them, but I want to emphasize not only is this a question of policy really, that the grocery stores in general aren't going to come unless they have the off-street parking spaces that they need, but I think this property is also distinct and unique, and the particular surroundings give rise to the need for this variance and a practical difficulty in applying the code. It's on a 2.5-mile stretch of North Avenue within the Wanata study area that has 3 grocery stores, and 2 of them are Save-A-Lots, and I think we've spoken with the community about those Save-A-Lots, but those are the only 3 full-service grocery stores in this area. So it's serving a gigantic population and one that is much larger than most places. And then on top of that, it's right off of I-83. So that also is going to bring an additional level of likelihood of car traffic. And then, as Mr. Davis said, this area is in desperate need of full-service grocery stores, and there are not other parcels that are of sufficient size and have the zoning to allow for a grocery store. So it is something where we're out of options, and it's going to serve a much larger community that is not within walking distance than most grocery stores would in the area. So I think with that, those are all of the items that I wanted to expand on and cover. One last item. I did want to address the community outreach. I think we did sort of summarize that there has been extensive outreach. In the memo I submitted to the file, I included a summary, and I'm just going to kind of verbally read it out loud here as well. So we have met with the historic Mount Royal Terrace 4 times between April 27th and August 4th, and then we also had another meeting last night, March 11th, which was extremely productive, and we appreciate them taking the time to walk the site with us, and we had, conversations about some items that we were able to add. We're going to impose a 4-hour time limit on the off-street parking to make sure that this is not somewhere where non-patrons of the center are just coming and parking out and going to the light rail. I think that will provide some comfort, hopefully, for the residents in the surrounding area, and it's also obviously in our interest because we want the parking lot to be reserved for patrons. And then we've also met with the Reservoir Hill Improvement Council twice last year, the Reservoir Hill Association. We met with February 11th and September 29th of last year, and then we met again on Tuesday night, March 10th. We've met with Bolton Hill, and then we've also hosted 2 community town halls that are open to everyone who may or may not be a participant in their neighborhood association. So again, there's been extensive outreach, and then on top of these meetings, there have been email communications and calls to address sort of the really thorough, specific, and broad scale questions, concerns, et cetera, that have been raised by the community. And the development team has made a number of changes actually to the plans to incorporate it. This was, as I mentioned, initially going to be 75 off-street parking spaces, and there are 65 that are now proposed. 10 of those spaces were removed to maintain some of the trees to the rear. We've also added a bollard to improve alley safety. There's a sidewalk along Watt Street that is been added, and there's also going to be a mid-block crosswalk, which was requested all to sort of improve the walkability of the area and its connection to the neighborhood. We are planting new trees throughout the neighborhood where trees are currently in poor condition. We're increasing the pedestrian refuge area that is currently at the intersection of Park and North Avenue. And then also we're adding 4 EV charging stations. Oh, no. Oh, no. That's okay. That's A-okay. That's me.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Yeah.
Tilden. Does any commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Joanne?
Yes, just practical question. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ms. Tilden. If we do not approve and recommend to the council for 65, does that mean there is no deal?
Yes.
That's all I need to know.
No parking, no grocery store.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Gotta get the grocery store. I actually have a question for the streets representative that's here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also, I think there are some members of the community here, and I'd just like to make sure that I have the opportunity to come back up and respond to any comments that are made.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll hear from the streets representative next.
Oh, they're gonna talk to you. Oh, Sasha Wade.
Well, you said you had a question, so I brought him up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I thought you were saying he had I thought you were saying he was gonna like present.
No.
Hi, good afternoon. Campbell Burns with Streets Market. Thank you guys for having me.
How you doing? So the first thing I want to say is obviously we're all as a city very excited for the streets coming into this facility. And I've worked on this project personally, so I'm of course very excited. But I would like you to address, there was an article 2 days ago that spoke about the closure of the streets at Yard 52. And so it would be helpful for you to speak from the company's perspective on your posture for Baltimore as you close one facility but open another, and what's the future, what should we expect as the future of streets in Baltimore growing?
Yeah, fair question. So just background, I'm one of the founders of Streets Market. We've been in Baltimore and started in Charles Street for, I think, 10, 12 years now. We signed that lease when all that stuff was going on and kept through with it. I personally love the city. We're here all the time. We're a local business, privately owned, so no private equity or no public equity. We're very committed to Baltimore City. With regard to the article a couple of days ago, I think there'll be additional press coming out that makes it even better. It was frankly just a little bit too big of a store for us. We tried to pull from different trade areas, and it's my mistake. This is a totally different project. In long term, it's going to be a win-win for both the city, for the community up in Greektown and the developer. So we made sure that the transition is going to be successful. But it's a totally different situation. No impact on how we view Baltimore long-term, short-term, anything. I mean, this is the 2 markets we operate in are Baltimore City and Washington, D.C., and we view Baltimore City as a major focus point today and for the next, for the rest of my life. And that's the plan.
Guys, so just so I understand clearly, what I heard you say was, one, local company,
Yep,
very committed.
yep,
The facility that you're closing now is one that you've been in for 5 years, really enjoyed, but the business model that you have right now really works best at the smaller footprint level.
that's correct.
And
Yep.
that's what you want to continue forward with and
Yes,
why
sir.
you're investing here.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, in a moment, I'll invite anyone from the public and the community who would like to testify about this matter. I will note that we've got a number of letters. They're categorized in favor and opposed. However, I would note that everyone is in favor of the grocery store. Everyone is in favor of the conditional use. The opposition is just around the variances, specifically the parking, and to a lesser extent, the setback. One other just comment, Mr. Tiso, there's a number of letters from individuals. There's a letter from the Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association expressing concern about the parking variance. There's also a letter from Reservoir Hill Association that's categorized as support, but that letter does talk about 36 parking spaces, so I was unclear if it seemed like it was not in support of the
That may have
variance.
been my errors. Things were coming through as I was skimming
Well,
things and
again,
batching them.
it's in support of the conditional use, which
Sure.
is the primary issue here. But again, it's just that particular letter had concern about the parking. All right, great. Next, I'll invite anyone from the community who would like to testify on this matter. We do ask folks to keep their remarks to 3 minutes if possible.
We'll have at least one on here for you.
Great, thank you. And if you could just introduce yourself, please, for the record.
Hi, I'm Christina Shoppard. I'm an attorney at Community Law Center, and I'm here on behalf of the Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
Shoppert, Schoppert. HMRTA is a 501c3 nonprofit neighborhood organization. Its boundaries are, how do I go back? Well, that's the southern end of it. Its boundaries are Mount Royal Terrace, North Avenue, Druid Park, Lake Drive, and Park Avenue, so it sort of extends north from where you see here. It is in Reservoir Hill, which has been on the National Register of Historic Places as an urban row home neighborhood since 2004. The homes of a number of HMRTA board members are up there on the screen. They directly abut this property. They're only separated by a small 12-foot alley that's not visible particularly there. Last week, HMRTA became aware of this Planning Commission meeting and MCB Blank Slate's request for approval of 65 parking spaces. After they requested CLC's involvement, I immediately contacted Ms. Tilden. As she said, we met last night with the community and with MCB representatives, but we were unsuccessful in coming to any agreement. As you said, Mr. Stevenson, this community is on board with the grocery store, super excited about the development, but not okay with the parking variance. And I'll explain that. So as the staff member said, this bill would increase the amount of parking allowed on the site by 81%. And HMRT members are excited, but they want this development to succeed, but they will not adopt the position that since they are finally getting a grocery store, they should just be quiet, accept the conditions imposed, and be grateful. They are invested, and they have been invested in this community for years and decades. They have not only capital, but also sweat equity, friendships, and their daily lives at stake. In one board member's words, "We want the development to be successful and to be a good neighbor, and good neighbors don't cause problems for the other neighbors." HMRTA is of the position that the developers of this site should be required to comply with the parking maximums thoughtfully adopted by our Baltimore City Council very recently. The code explicitly lays out parking maximums for retail establishments, including grocery stores, quite explicitly, in order to encourage non-vehicular transportation in Baltimore City. Baltimore is making great strides to improve upon its inequitable and environmentally problematic history of prioritizing automobiles over other forms of transportation, most recently with City Council Bill 250065. Approving this variance would be a step back. The Our Baltimore, Your Baltimore plan continually emphasizes the importance of transit-oriented development. And I quote from page 100, "With TOD, buildings, roads, bikeways, walkways, and parking are designed to prioritize walking, biking, and transit with improved facilities for active transportation and a reduction in parking requirements." This site is an opportunity. It is along numerous bus routes and a light rail stop. It's a short walk to the train station. We argue that it therefore does not meet the practical difficulty standard given existing public transit. Rather, this is a policy decision about whether development is going to encourage automobile transportation or active transportation. Further, every day, children walk along the perimeter of this site, crossing that alley, Watts Street, which is going to be an entrance, two-way ingress, egress, entrance, and exit to the parking lot. And then they cross North Avenue. These intersections are, there's a school, Mount Royal Elementary Middle School is just south of here. These intersections are already dangerous. They require studies and improvements, not more automobile traffic. In 2024, HMRTA sent a letter to MCB requesting that a traffic impact study be performed on this site. As residents, they believe that it would be irresponsible and dangerous for this commission to approve an 81% increase in parking spaces permitted on this site without, at the least, reviewing thorough traffic impact studies and sharing that study or those studies with the family whose children walk on these streets every day. In March 2025, HMRTA members commented on MCB's draft site plan, indicating where they saw potential for improvements. HMRTA appreciates the changes that MCB made. One crosswalk was added. It wasn't shown in the site plan showed today, but we have seen a crosswalk on Park Avenue. A sidewalk and bollard were added on an alleyway, and the number of additional parking spaces requested was reduced by 10 spaces. However, the item that will have the most impact on the neighbors, the number of cars accessing this site via the neighborhood and parking in residents' backyards, has not been meaningfully addressed. HMRTA is aware that the Streets Market and MCB's development in Greektown, which you just discussed, has plentiful parking, but it is set to close. HMRTA wants the development here to succeed. Should it not, however, they do not want to be left with an oversized parking lot, a vestige of bygone planning practices when cars were prioritized above all else. Baltimore's current transit development plan addresses transportation from an equity perspective, recognizing that many inner neighborhoods of Baltimore, especially predominantly Black neighborhoods, have either no vehicle or limited access to a vehicle. And the plan prioritizes transit-oriented development, for which there is a great opportunity on this site. HMRTA believes that this project can be a cornerstone of a new kind of development, the kind that Baltimore leaders and elected officials have said they are working hard to implement. Development that moves Baltimore towards a future in which residents are less reliant on cars and in which residents can access retail by foot or by public transportation. We therefore respectfully request that this commission commit to Baltimore City's stated priorities and not recommend the parking variance. Thank you. Now you will hear from a few HMRTA members. That's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next person who would like to speak on this matter?
Hi, I'm Sarah Jacqueline. I live in 615 Lenox, which abuts the property. You can see my house. I'm greatly supportive of the grocery store. I'd like to mention that I live downtown close to the Charles Street streets where I was a pedestrian and used that store as a pedestrian that had a 15-minute walk to that store, regularly used it as a pedestrian. So I do think that I'm not sure, like I'm trying to hear the the information you presented about kind of the walkable community and also who has like access to this and the need for, opening that up to more people with cars. And I'm just not sure that that is completely accurate to actually like who accesses how long people actually are willing to move, like to get to the grocery store and like the full array of ways that people will actually get to this grocery store. I'm not sure if that 550 customers per day is the same actually as who is using the downtown store every day or who's using the Charles Street store. I didn't see that evidence was like directly proportional or like how that actually is, working in your business model. I am interested in hearing that because I am sensitive to the fact that for the grocery store to be sustainable, it has to have, a business model and a pro forma that works. But I do think that there is greater capacity for people to get to and use this grocery store with the multimodal like transportation that was discussed in this presentation. And I think that it might take a little bit of like vision to see kind of the equity transportation that you spoke to in your last speak. Just like we have to maybe get past some comfort in thinking that the only way that people will be able to access this is through cars. And we do believe that the more space there is for cars, then the more demand there will be for cars in our neighborhood. So that's mostly what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify on this matter?
Thank you all for your time. My name is Frida Alvarado Fanning. I'm the president of HMRTA, and I live in the neighborhood, obviously. I'm here representing my neighbors who are most impacted by the proposed development on 600 Northwest Avenue. And we are here today to oppose the request for the parking variance. This project has been in discussion for years, and our community was genuinely excited about the possibility of welcoming a grocery store in our neighborhood. However, the plans have changed significantly. We were under the impression there would be 36 parking spaces, and now we're being told that Streets wants more than 60. At the same time, the community is being told that as if the variance, if it's not approved, Streets will not sign the deal. Our neighbors have repeatedly asked what safety measures would accompany the increase in this traffic, and we have received almost no answers. North Avenue between Maryland and Park is already extremely busy corridor. It is also a route that many children in our neighborhood use every day to walk to and from school. I have personally witnessed cars speeding past pedestrians with little regard for their safety, and even drivers honking at pedestrians who are simply trying to get across the street. I have had drivers honk at me when I stop to let someone cross the street. Now we are being asked to accept the significantly more traffic on these same streets without meaningful and safety measures in place. Members in the community suggested a reasonable solution: timed parking to prevent commuters from leaving cars all day. And we heard today that timed parking will be possible. However, this does not solve the traffic problem. We are also told that several concessions had been made to benefit the community, and we asked what those concessions were. The examples provided were 4 EV parking spaces, which are already included in the total parking count, and replanting of trees removed during construction. Those are not meaningful concessions. Our community supported the idea of a grocery store because we believe it would benefit the neighborhood, but changes like this made to improve the bottom line for the corporation while offering little protection for the surrounding community are exactly why we must advocate for ourselves today. For these reasons, I ask that the variance be denied. And can I also add that I think the founder of Streets made a comment, or someone made a comment about the traffic in the neighborhood. It almost feels like other people are being put ahead of our community. I'm happy that Christina pointed out where children walk past on this street. So if you see North Ave, right where that large tree is at the bottom of the screen, that's North Ave and Park, which are huge issues with young people crossing the street, because even though you can't cross on a red light, turn on a red light, people do anyway. They blow past, if you look kind of in the middle of the screen or towards the top of the screen on the left side, where you see the square for the four-way stop sign, those are suggestions for cars. The stop sign is a suggestion for them to stop. We've been out and watched cars blow by constantly because we love our neighborhood and we spend time around our homes. We are asking, what are they planning for the safety of our neighborhood? And if this closes down, again, what are we going to be left with? So thank you so much for letting me have this time.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello. My name is Lars Peterson. I'm a resident of 615 Lenox, which is right there, and a former member of the board of HMRTA. I wanted to point out a couple of things about this site that aren't immediately apparent. First is this as-built, previously as-built, actually has far fewer than 65 parking spaces. I think it's more like 36, to be honest, for a much larger building footprint. That said, this building had fewer occupants and obviously has less need of parking than a grocery store. But certainly what is visible right here is not 65 parking spaces, and it's certainly not 85 parking spaces. I think it's really important, and I want to underscore what somebody mentioned earlier, that within that quarter mile, that walkable quarter mile, is a light rail station, which is very heavily trafficked at North Avenue, which is just over the bridge. There are several bus stops right on the eastern edge of this photo, right at the corner of our block. There's a bus stop that people are getting onto and off of buses all day long. So there is a lot of transit traffic to this site already. And I think that's really important to remember, that we can build towards an automobile-centric development, or we can choose, as the most recent changes to the zoning code do, we can choose a different type of development. So even though I do want a supermarket in this location, it feels like now I'm addressing not just this commission, but also Streets Market and their representatives, and asking to consider that it is possible to build a successful retail location without assuming that every person who comes and goes from that location is going to do so by car. I moved to this location 16 years ago without an automobile, and I chose this particular part of Baltimore City because it is easy to get to. It is in the middle of the city. It's well served by transit. It's very close to many bikeways. It's actually a safe and reasonable place to commute from, not by car. And so to prioritize cars here, I think, is a mistake, and I oppose this variance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Matthew Best. I live at 607 Lenox Street, right behind the site there. And I'm opposed to the parking variance in CCB 26-0150. I am a traffic engineer by trade, and our international trade organization, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, publishes a parking generation manual, which estimates peak parking demand based on land use type and size. So the sum total for the proposed land uses and sizes on this site is 45 total parking spaces needed during peak demand. So the 36 allowed by right plus the 18 that is being proposed by the site along North Avenue, that's 54 parking spaces. That's 9 more than that peak demand of 45. This is located in a very dense single-family neighborhood, multifamily. The MICA dormitories are on the bottom right there, with over approximately 2,000 student body population. There's adjacent high-capacity transit that was mentioned earlier. Nearby West Baltimore neighborhoods such as Upton and Sandtown Winchester have more than 50% of the houses in those communities do not have access to a personal vehicle. So all of that sort of calls into question, who is this site designed for? In the proposed finding of fact, in Exhibit 8 is a parking memo justifying the number of spaces. There's a lot of math in there. The analysis hinges on a rule of thumb of 4 to 5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. There's no citation provided for where this rule of thumb comes from, but it appears to be a rule of thumb that applies to a suburban type site. And this is a very urban area and only getting more dense by, more urbanized, more dense by the day, especially with the development going in on the west side of Park Avenue. So I believe additional detailed justification for 65 spots, 20 more than that peak demand of 45 should be provided by the applicant. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify on this matter? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Oh, we've one online?
Two online.
Two online, all right.
Okay, this is from Keandra Pryor. Members of the Planning Commission, my name is Keandra Pryor, President of the Reservoir Hill Association. The Reservoir Hill Association is writing in support with amendments to the Council Bill 260150. Our position is based on community-wide meetings held by the Reservoir Hill Association Planning and Development Committee, as well as a community-wide meeting held by Senator Hayes at Dorothy I. Height Elementary School, and an impromptu presentation representatives of MCB and Blank Slate Real Estate made before the association on March 10th, 2026. Liquor license. We support the bill's approval of beer, wine, and liquor license for the proposed establishment with a caveat that business hours for the sale of beer, wine, and liquor do not go beyond 9 p.m. The community wishes that the license would only apply to beer, wine, and liquor store and not the grocery store as a whole. For off-street parking. We agree with the established city code that 36 parking spots for vehicles is sufficient for an establishment of this size. We believe a large number of customers will arrive to the establishment by other modes of transportation. We support easy access to each business with a focus on pedestrian, bicycle, and public transit. We echo the concerns of Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association and the neighbors most impacted by changes to traffic and parking. Because representatives of the site have communicated that the store's operation will heavily depend on customers well outside of the community's footprint, careful study and consideration of its impacts will be important. We want to remind the Commission that as of the 2024 census, 25% of residents in Reservoir Hill do not have regular access to a personal vehicle. Most residents plan to access the store by foot. 70% of residents live in multifamily housing in both Bolton Hill and Reservoir Hill. Although many Streets Markets do not have additional parking, we have been told that Streets Market will be unable to commit our community without a minimum of 65 parking spaces. The community has requested a clear and transparent explanation of how this number was calculated, with representatives having promised after this hearing. We do know the stores in Bolton Hill with a large parking lot is empty because of the clientele who mostly walk to the store. We have been told that part of the calculation is based on the low density of our community. We would like to share with the Planning Commission that our community has fought hard to increase the density of representatives' other project at 700 West North Avenue. Perhaps, as initially envisioned, that site accommodated multifamily housing rather than additional single-family townhomes. The density calculations could have been more favorable. Because we still do not have access to the logic that undergirds the necessity of 65 spaces, we cannot support that variance at this time. We encourage continued dialogue with the community on this issue. On-street parking. We oppose any changes to the current on-street parking in the public right-of-way. We especially caution any changes to North Avenue which may impede future plans for a separated and protected bicycle lane or for bus priority lanes. This is in alignment with the West North Avenue Development Comprehensive Master Plan and the Baltimore City Comprehensive Plan, especially with regard to transit-oriented development and the 2024 proposed land use map. We hope that the applicant in the future can meet with the community and intentionally engage us in a way that is transparent and clear with all organizations together. We would like to note that the March 10th meeting was not scheduled, but in response to our opposition letter. And also have testimony here from Jed Weeks with Bikemore. Our testimony is not a position, but a request for information. Has the city or developer confirmed in writing with USDOT that the proposed changes to the existing dedicated bus lane will not subject us to grant recapture from North Avenue Rising? And those are the two comments we have online.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tiso or perhaps Mr. Davis, who would be the best to respond to the bus lane question?
So I believe North Avenue Rising is project managed by DOT, so I think we'd have to coordinate with DOT staff to understand the effects fully. And I don't know if Brandon wants to speak on this as a SPRC representative, but I do believe there was significant discussions between DOT and planning and the applicants during the SPRC process, both in response to the bus bike lane and the parking.
I can address that.
And then I will have one more comment that popped up online. Would you like to hear that first?
Yes.
There's a comment from Miguel, who didn't leave a last name. I agree with the testimony today from members of RHA and HMRTA, which is to say that we welcome the much-needed grocery store in our community, but are opposed to any additional parking. I also call into question the math behind the pedestrian customers versus customers likely to drive. For one, you talk about walkable distance, but what about bikeable distance? Customers that would take the extremely convenient bus route with a stop right in front of the space. Customers that could take the light rail, et cetera. These don't appear to be factored in. In terms of density, when we compare the customer likely to visit this space versus the one near Hopkins campus, our community, which would more likely be full of families purchasing groceries for their family for the week versus what a student might purchase. Okay, I think that's all we have at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Tilden?
Thank you, guys. So there are a few things that came up that I just want to quickly address. I think first I can speak to the on-street parking. There's been extensive conversations with DOT. We had a kind of really thorough SPRC review process. This has received SPRC approval. We actually walked the site with MTA and former Director Tim Keene just to make sure that the way that this was being planned out and laid out was going to be safe and secure. So there are a couple things, smaller things that I want to address, I think. First, I do want to clarify this. Actually, what was initially presented to all the community groups was 75 spaces. I think there's been some transitions in leadership, but we've included some information in the file and communications that actually demonstrate that there was a site plan that was disseminated and was actually marked up with recommendations. So it was shared. This was always initially 75 spaces, now 65. But I want to go back and address the equity arguments that have come up here. This doesn't eliminate the availability of public transportation to this site. What it does is it brings a grocery store to an area that is adjacent to the highest concentration of food deserts in Baltimore City. I understand that there was an issue raised that only 50% of people in some of these areas rely on a car. But 50% of those, that means the other 50% does have a car, and they will be able to drive to this location. And they are not going to have to drive to somewhere that is far away from their community to go and get groceries. These are areas where 81% of the Wanata corridor is Black. I have a quote that I'm going to try and find quickly in my memorandum that sort of outlines the intent of Wanata. I'm trying to get to it and having a little bit of context, a little bit of trouble. Yeah, so from the start, the Wanata Plan says that it is aiming to address disparities that are caused by persistent racial and economic discrimination, historic disinvestment, predatory practices, and advance equitable development opportunities throughout West Baltimore that empower local actors, leverage local knowledge, and prioritize the needs of residents in the community who have experienced harm. Now, it is specifically identified that they are looking for diversified community grocers to come into this area. That is what's coming here now. So to say that 65 parking spaces are going to somehow cause an equitable harm is inaccurate.
Thank you, Ms. Tilden.
And obviously if the commission has any further questions, but I think nobody is saying that this is not going to be available to public transit, but it is bringing this amenity that is desperately needed, and it's making it available to people who do not currently have access.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And with that, I will close the public hearing.
Thank you.
I'll open it among the commission for discussion. Commissioner Jolin, any comments?
I will happily go first, maybe not so happily. I think I am uniquely qualified to speak on this matter, given that my next door neighbor on the 33rd Street where I live is Giant. This is Giant, this is me, this is my neighborhood. Those of you who spoke, I am you here. This is me, just in a different neighborhood. And my parking lot is 165 spots next to me. That is where I live. So that's me on a personal level. On the professional level, working in a completely different district and negotiating with a grocery store, knowing the food desert issue in Baltimore, knowing the lack of good options, the difficulty of profit margins for our grocery stores, it is really at my heart. I hear the community and the difficulty of having parking spots right next to your home. You know where I live now, you can look it up, it's public record. I can't personally, as a commissioner, risk the deal falling through. So I say all that to say, given that perspective, my challenge back to the community is, one, your personal convenience of living next to a grocery store is so high. When I bought my house, I thought I was going to be super inconvenienced by living next to Giant. It's completely opposite. I feel European. It's really cool. The other challenge I would love the community to consider is 65 spaces versus vacancy. Like, where do you really sit in that argument? Like, where do you truly feel? And you could say, I want 0 cars, and I totally respect that. But I would challenge you versus to my 165 spots, where do you really sit on your argument for that? And then if you go, you know what, maybe I can deal with 65, think about what you really want living right next door to a grocery store, which is, I would challenge you, and sorry team over there, but go back to the streets market and say, all right, fine, I'm okay with this, but are you gonna clean my neighborhood? Because grocery stores bring a lot of trash. How are you gonna secure it? We have a lot more people coming into this area. So you do have options outside of just fighting for the parking spots. Let's say this is not a deal that can be made here, right? But you do have other deals that you can go back to the retailer and say, well, you're gonna clean up my neighborhood every week. This is what we did with our Giant. They come straight down my neighborhood and clean it all up once a week. That's the deal the community made with them. So you're gonna see my vote. I don't want you to be mad at me. I can't risk losing a grocery store in Baltimore City, but you do have other options outside of this to have a well-rounded new neighbor in your neighborhood.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoach, any comments?
A few brief ones. Looking at the site plan, if we were sitting here maybe 15 years ago, what we would typically see is a grocery store pushed back away from the street by about 2 aisles of parking. Very suburban layout. In fact, because we're able to pull that store close to the street and respond to the street edge, it becomes a better part of the urban fabric, which is great. However, just look at the I guess the drugstore on 25th Street. There was a CVS that we required to be facing 25th Street, and the parking is behind it. And what you see there is now a vacant store that's been vandalized and graffitied up. And the issue with any commercial structure that turns its back away from the street is, how are you going to activate that street face? So I'm entirely in favor of the variance that allows a dining patio to be facing North Avenue, especially adjacent to that pathway through the site, because the main entrance is always going to face the parking lot. And so the main entrance to this store, I'm pretty certain, is sort of right up there at the top of that path where you see the handicap spaces. So the benefit is better urban response, activated street, and hidden parking. So I'm not convinced, I'm not convinced at all that with the synergies of the light rail, of bus transit infrastructure, of bicycle lanes, and I ride those bike lanes too, I don't think that those will be compromised by the addition of another 30 spaces above maximum permitted. I think that all of those systems will function perfectly well with those additional 30 parking spaces. So I guess I will come down in favor of agreeing to the variances.
Councilman?
Well, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the community response and some of the comments from our colleagues on the commission. You know, it was interesting hearing just about the difference of numbers and the perception that folks had in terms of the beginning over time. I've heard numbers going anywhere from 75 down to 65, and then 36 and 45 as a reference in terms of peak demand. A couple thoughts. I'm very familiar with that area, having two sons who went to Mount Royal, and what I will note in terms of the traffic patterns that have been noted, I think there are some work for DOT and traffic enforcement to do. I look at it as a separate issue than the parking spaces, right? So how people are traversing North Avenue or how they are accessing 83. Given that it's coming off 83, I could see how folks might utilize those parking spaces. One other point that I will make is that even in the former life, I was a transportation planner, but don't get mad at me for that. But what I will say also is that it's not as if the spaces actually increase the level of vehicular traffic. So that's one piece. But I would submit maybe there may be some potential for compromise, right? Maybe it's 65, maybe it's 60. I'm not exactly sure what the number is, and I think it might be helpful for the community to hear how those numbers got arrived at, or particularly the calculations that got there. But I think we are pretty much of the same mind that there's a need for parking and a balance of modalities of travel in the city. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Allen?
Thank you. First, I want to say this is one of the things I love about this commission, and I love about being on this commission. People bringing their personal and professional perspectives to weigh in on their decisions and their decision making. So both of you, everybody here, but particularly you, Commissioner Jolin, I know that area very well. I can picture that. That helped me. And your balanced input on that. Thank you. I came up with some questions that I'm not going to ask people to answer now because we're moving along, but they came up as people were speaking, and I don't want to interrupt the process. I need my glasses to see them. Sorry. But I do want to throw them out, food for thought. I don't remember the square footage that's proposed, but it did make me think about the Trader Joe's model, because Trader Joe's model is small or limited amount of parking. They look for sites that have limited parking, and I was at 2 of them recently, and it is infuriating to me, but I go there knowing, and everybody else goes there knowing, that they are going to have to lose time. I won't say lose time, use time, waiting for parking, maybe not fighting, but waiting for parking, driving around. The 2 places I can think of right now, there are other uses in those, in the places where they are, but if you isolate the number of spaces that are dedicated to Trader Joe's, it probably is about 35. And I was curious about what that, how that weighs relative to this spot. So just something to think about. And that came from my wondering, I should remember this as a planner, but I don't, why the grocery store is not feasible with less than 65 spaces. And again, I'm not asking you to come up and answer, but it was a question that came to me. And those 2 struck me at the same time. Why is the grocery store in this site infeasible with less than 65? And bear in mind that there are very successful grocery store models that purposefully operate with a very limited amount of parking that they know is not up to what is expected on the part of the shoppers. And the final thing that occurred to me looking at the site plan is if there are not enough, and I put that in quotation marks because I'll say from the developer's point of view, the 65 would be enough. If there are not enough parking spaces as proposed, if motorists who want to shop here come and don't find parking, isn't it possible that they may spill into the surrounding neighborhood? And is that desirable on the part of the neighbors? Now, those who live on Mount Royal Terrace may not be as worried about it because it's less likely that people will park there. I know the layout there. But isn't it possible they will park on Park Avenue? Now, that first block, there are not houses fronting there, but the next portion of the block. And then even possibly coming around into those back portions there. Just something to think about. Again, I'm not looking for answers now. They came to me, and I'd like people to consider that. Sorry to take.
No, thank you very much, Commissioner Allen. And I will speak a little bit to one of your questions because I think that we did hear some of those answers, but I'd like to summarize. Mr. Deputy Mayor?
I did have one question. Ms. Tilden mentioned a non-negotiable for the deal. Was that was the 65 parking spots? Okay. Yeah, I think my assessment from listening to everybody is I think that the first thing is I think to a point that was made, the reality of the need for a grocery store here is very real. And that is paramount over everything in my assessment. I do think that we should ask the developer to consider, as Ms. Allen just mentioned, like how much parking really is needed. Like it doesn't make sense to me as well, the idea that a quantified number of parking spots makes or breaks the amount of the success, especially when we've seen specifically for streets, their ability to be successful without parking spaces. So I think that is a real thought that everybody should think about. But I also agree with what Ms. Jolin said around the cost balance, the cost benefit here really is like it's just one thing is just worth way more than the other. Like the grocery store versus parking spot. You just gotta get the grocery store. So if at the end of the day, this is the case that has to be made, I think it's a good balance, and we go forward.
I'm sorry, you just reminded me, there was a grocery store. There was a grocery store, I think it was a block away. I think it's on the site that's now demolished. I doubt that it had much parking. I don't remember. I can't picture it anymore, but because of the urban nature of the neighborhood, I doubt that it had a great amount of parking like you'd expect in a suburban site.
So there's a couple of things for me that are, not in tension with each other, but kind of informing this debate. One of them is the superseding need for a grocery store, and the concern around the larger parking lot and to the extent that will increase traffic is a bit of an interesting, if not ironic one, because it's sort of an if you build it, they will come mentality. Whereas if you build a big parking lot, you're going to get more cars. And that might be true. We don't necessarily have to debate it here. But what's interesting about it is, to use that logic to restrict parking, says that we will limit the number of people who can access this place so that it doesn't increase traffic. And I think it would be great if this could truly be a neighborhood pedestrian-oriented store. But because of the food desert and, you've got to go several neighborhoods before you find a grocery store, this location does have to serve everyone. It's got to serve the folks who are fortunate enough to be able to walk there, as well as folks who this will become their closest option that still requires a car. So that's one thing. The other thing, just to respond, to your question, because I think what we heard about what makes this store different than other locations is the density and, frankly, I'm sure the economic demographics of this neighborhood that require both the quarter-mile catchment of folks who can walk there, the Mount Royal folks, the Reservoir Hill folks, the Micah folks, part of Bolton Hill. But it also has to include the Sandtown Winchester folks and the, Bridgeview, Green Lawn, Edmondson, like, it's gotta reach more people as well. And the most important thing for the city is that this project is successful and, kind of risk reward, making sure that that limitation isn't the Achilles heel, I think is possibly the wisest course.
Is that addressing the why it has to be at least 65?
Well, I think that I was speaking to what makes this location different than
Oh, I didn't ask.
other.
I very much understand.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were addressing that to me.
It was helpful to me, though. I appreciate you saying it.
Well, in terms of the actual number of 65, we saw some calculations from the applicant. We also heard from the traffic engineer in the back who had, some different calculations. I think, and someone mentioned this maybe before, what's the risk reward? What's the trade-off of, eliminating 20 spots from this plan? Does that make it meaningfully better or less impactful to the neighborhood? I'm sure folks have different opinions. I'm not convinced that it does. To Commissioner Allen's point, if the store is as popular as we hope it will be, there could be overflow, potential concerns, because we know the demand here is higher than it is in other locations for all the reasons that we've said. So I don't have anything additional to add.
Thank you.
We can discuss further, or we can have a motion.
Offer a motion to accept the recommendation of staff.
So move. Or second.
Any further discussion before we have a vote? I just would like to make one more comment before we vote, which is, a lot of the concerns in general were related to traffic safety, which this commission takes very seriously. The DOT takes seriously and should take even more seriously. And, on a personal level is something that's a huge issue in my community, which is not far at all from here. That being said, we cannot let traffic safety be the reason that we do not have a grocery store. We have to be able to do both and. And so, those additional conversations around, negotiating with the tenant and coordinating with DOT, whether it's on traffic safety or the transit coordination, those things are important and perhaps should be attached to our recommendation. And as the chair would probably remind us all, we are a recommending body on this, and, city council will have the final decision.
Mr. Stevenson, I think you're right about we should, if we could send a recommendation to DOT to look at traffic calming, that probably is an excellent idea. But I also want to underscore what you said around the surrounding neighborhoods. We heard a lot from folks who live in the neighborhoods, and we're thrilled, and we appreciate it. I really appreciate that you also were able to share what we know is a real thing with neighborhoods that we'll have to drive. I mean, and what it caused in my mind was for me to think about what's the next grocery store to the west. What's the next one to the east?
Mm-hmm.
I think the closest one to the south is the streets on Charles Street, right? And then what's the closest one to the north? And you got to travel a distance. So this is going to be very valuable to a lot of people in the city of Baltimore.
Ms. Executive Secretary, I think we can have a roll call. I'm sorry, before we do that, Commissioner McCoach, are you agreeable to having that recommendation added to your motion?
Yeah, please, yes.
Thank you. Very well.
Commissioner Allen.
Approve as recommended.
Councilman Bullock.
Approve.
Commissioner Gillen.
Approve.
Commissioner McCoach.
Approve.
Vice Chairman Stevenson.
Approve.
And Deputy Mayor Young.
Approve.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you for everyone who came to testify on this matter. And congratulations to the development team and the community who's going to get this great asset. Mr. Chair.
Would you call the next item for us, please?
Item number 6, City Council Bill number 26-0154, zoning conditional use conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to 2 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district, variance 1610 East Chase Street in the 12th District. Justin Walker will present.
Good afternoon, everyone. Justin Walker, DOP, here on Council Bill 26-154. This is a residential conversion of 1610 East Chase Street to 2 dwelling units. The owner is KKU Estate Investors LLC. The property is located in the East Planning District, where Amani Fox, is the community planner. So taking a look at the map here, we can see the location of the property over on the east side of the city in the Gay Street neighborhood. Looking at the tax plat here, we can see it's a middle of the row house with some demolition that has occurred on the block, as we can also see in the satellite view here. As we drop down to the street view, we can see there's been some substantial improvements. The Google Street View on the left is from 2020. The image on the right is the proof of posting that the applicants set in last week. So you can see substantial rehab has occurred. So the summary of the request with this bill are per section 9701 of the zoning code. Residential conversions from single family to multifamily in R8 require conditional use by ordinance of the city council. As far as the variance is concerned, per zoning table 9401 in the R8, 500 square feet of lot area is required per dwelling unit, so 1,000 square feet for 2 units. The lot encompasses 1,088 square feet, so it meets the requirement. Obviously, the bill does include a variance for the lot area. Staff is recommending an amendment to strike this lot area variance. The bill was drafted after Ordinance 2563 took effect, but the bill was responding to the letter of the zoning administrator, which was drafted October of 25, before the bill reduced the lot area requirement in the R8 zoning district from 750 down to 500. So as the bill intended, it is reducing the number of variances that are required and completely eliminates the variances for this project. So with the lot area variance removed, this is purely a conditional use request. And as the conditional use approval standards of section 5406 lay out, if the use is not more impactful at this specific site than in any other similarly zoned property, it may be approved, and staff finds no reason to believe that this location would be more impactful, as is laid out in the staff report. As far as the equity analysis, this, as we saw in the photos, will return this property to productive use and maintain housing options in the neighborhood. The East Baltimore Development Incorporated was notified and also submitted a letter of support for the project. I understand that the applicant is joining us online. If the commission has any questions, for them, and the staff recommendation is approval with the amendment to strike Section 2 of the bill regarding the variance to reflect the changes of Ordinance 2563.
Thank you. Is there anybody here who wishes to testify in this matter? No applicant?
They are online. Yes.
Does the applicant wish to say anything?
I'll have to use the chat feature.
We can wait. I just want to give him a chance, him, if you said.
No, he just says applicant here, yes.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff or for the applicant? Okay.
Question for Councilman Bullock.
Please.
When city council gonna stop making us hear these?
I've been fighting this battle for years, so hopefully in the next month or so, hopefully, God willing.
Well, I was actually going to say, I was actually going to thank the mayor and city council for taking the variance off the table. So we're going in the right direction here, right? Yeah, okay. If there's nobody here, I'll close any public testimony. Is there a motion to approve the staff recommendation, which is, again, approve the conditional use, strike the variance since it's unnecessary under the code?
So moved.
It's been moved, Commissioner
Second.
Jolin, seconded by the councilman. Any further discussion? Do a roll call vote, please.
Robin Allen,
Approve.
John Bullock,
Approve.
Claudia Jolin,
Approve.
Doug McCoach,
Approve.
Calvin Young, stepped out.
Yeah.
Eric Stevenson,
Approve.
and Mr. Lyria.
Approve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item number 7, City Council Bill number 25-0130, City Streets, closing a portion of Remington Avenue bounded by West 27th Street, Remington Avenue, West 28th Street, and Cresmont Avenue in the 12th District, presented by Caitlin Audette.
Good afternoon, Commission. As stated, I'm here today to present the revised street closing for a 14-foot portion of Remington Avenue. So previously, if you might have recalled, you heard this twice last year, once for a 12-foot portion and once for a 13.5-foot portion, and it just is growing by 6 inches this time. So my name is Caitlin Audette. The petitioner here is 211 West 28th Street. Under Drew Tilden, and then the owner is 211 West 28th Street. This is in the Northern Planning District, for which Marie Anderson is the community planner. Here you can see the general vicinity of the area that's proposed for closure. This is along Remington Avenue between West 28th Street to the north and Cresmont Avenue to the southeast. And then an aerial view, this is kind of in the heart of Remington at the location of the 7-Eleven, which I believe has already been demolished as this project has moved forward. And another view of the site. And here's a street view of the site as well. So this is the location, like I stated, at the heart of Remington, near where the R is, and across from other landmarks in the area. So the proposal is to further kind of grow the street closure. What's unique here is that this was heard twice before, once on March 28th of 2024 for a closing of a 12-foot portion of the street, and again in April of that year with the closing of a 13.5-foot portion of the right-of-way. Today, DOT has requested that they extend that an extra 6 inches so that because it's very close to the property line, and we want to make sure that there is a buffer, so there is no chance that the building will be in the right-of-way. So here you can see the proposed site plan that was reviewed at UDAP showing where the building is going to be. I apologize, it is turned, so north is to the right, and you can see where the building is going to be. It's taking up a very limited portion of the footprint of the space because there's a large utility that goes right through the middle, and so that space will be public use with a cute little kind of park area and spill-out space for a retail tenant on the ground floor. They've been working closely with MTA as well for the bus stop that will be located planned north, directly in front of the building along Remington Avenue. So again, here's the history. We've seen this twice before, and it's just growing by that 6-inch increment. Might be the smallest thing we've reviewed here. And so the analysis, the action before the Planning Commission is to determine whether the portion of the right-of-way is needed for public purpose as part of our authority over the master plan of the city. So this portion already appears to be a part of the site. It's not visibly a part of the right-of-way, and there is no need to expand the roadway of Remington Avenue. So for this reason, we believe that there is no public need for this additional 6 inches for a total of 14 feet of the right-of-way, and it can be closed and sold. As part of the equity analysis, this closure and sale would not have any negative impact on the surrounding community and actually would have a positive impact by allowing this development to continue. It will allow for the reasonable redevelopment of this odd parcel, and it will not have any undue impacts for staff time or resources. So we recommend approval. Any questions?
Ms. Odette, thank you for that. I've been by there and I was thrilled to see that the 7-Eleven is down, or I'm sure it's completely down by now, and that there's a nice project going up in its place. My only question is, and I'll call everybody's attention to the fact that we have some letters of support. I think maybe a letter of support, a letter in opposition. There's a little bit of old letter, new letter because of the fact that this has been heard before. But the updated support letter from the relevant community association makes special note of advocating for a shared use path. And I don't know exactly where, as part of the bike master plan, I don't know where that stands. But pursuant to sort of my general view that we need to make sure that we don't do things that are contrary to or preempt, other things that we might want to do. Do you have any insight into that question of shared use path and this closure?
I do not. I apologize. Do you have any information, Eric? Okay, yeah, I can ask to better understand. I know there was a lot of question about the usability of Cresmont when this was being redeveloped, and potential for closure of that, use for for bike lanes and other pedestrian activities, but not specifically along Remington.
Is anybody, applicant is here, and it's all right. Will you have something to say about this? Fine. Sure. So we'd like to hear when you come up in a minute. Great. Are there questions for Ms. Audette before we bring up the applicant and anybody else who wishes to testify? No. Okay, thank you very much. The applicant is here, represented presumably by Ms. Hecker. And gentlemen, please come on up, introduce yourselves. It would be useful if it hasn't been clearly stated what actually is going on the parcel.
Yes, thanks. Good afternoon, Caroline Hecker, Rosenberg, Martin Greenberg. On behalf of the applicant, I'm joined by Matt Pinto of Seawall, which is developing a new mixed-use multifamily building with ground floor commercial on the parcel at issue here. Also, just to back up a second, I want to congratulate Director Southard on her new role. And I also want to draw attention to the fact that I believe she's the first woman director of the Planning Commission, and I'm very proud of her for that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Anyway, it's a mixed-use multifamily building. I think it has about 60 units. Is that right? That's right. Good, excellent. The reason that it's, this is a goofy shaped site, it's a triangle, and the reason that we are limited to the top half of the site for the building is that there's a storm drain that runs across, this?
Yeah, well, let's go back to a drawing of site plan of some kind.
Too far. There we go. There's a storm drain that runs, I guess it would be up and down on the drawing as it is here, below the building, and that sort of carves our site in half. And so we can't build the building over the storm drain.
It's a 96-inch storm drain, about 40 feet below the
It's a big honking storm drain.
It's the same size storm drain that actually collapsed, I think, on North Avenue a few years back, and that was what spurred some of our reluctance to build over top of it, which is why we're keeping the building to the north end of the site and doing a community plaza towards the south.
Right. Do you want to address the issue about the shared use path?
I sure can. So we've been discussing that with GRIA and their desire. Jed Weeks is one of those folks on the board over there, and he's been asking us about the ability to do that shared path. The issue we're running into is the bus stop and the short-term bike storage that's slated along Remington Avenue right there. So if you kind of see along Remington Avenue to the, I guess the upper side of this drawing, there would be enough space for a little bit, but then it's going to narrow and it's going to be tricky to get the bike lane through that area where the bus stop is planned toward the corner of 28th and Remington. So we've got a developer's agreement that has pretty much been approved, and we've put in all the fees and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know what we could do at this point. Jed has asked me if I would send him a copy of our executed DA. He could maybe give some comments on what we could maybe do. What's that?
He's online.
Right, so we talked about that earlier this week, so I think that's something that we'd be open to doing if there was an opportunity to do
I
it.
just can't, I mean, I've been on that lot, I'm trying to remember what's there. Is there any sort of bike facility there now? I know I just can't remember what
No,
the configuration of bike
There
facilities.
isn't anything there now, and there wasn't anything there before the 7-Eleven was raised. So that would be new temporary bike storage that would go onto the site. That was, again, a part of our approved.
No, the bike storage I get, but I'm talking about the shared use. I'm just trying to get oriented here. There's a bike facility on 28th Street, obviously when you come off the bridge, and look, oh, there you go. That's great. Some sort of an image.
Go
Yeah,
back
I don't
one
think
more.
there's anything on Remington Avenue.
Go back one more slide. Keep going. Was there another one? Yeah. I don't think there is now, but the other piece of this is obviously that the community has asked us to make it an inline bus stop as opposed to one that sort of pulls to the shoulder. So the whole curb line is going to come out a little bit, and it's going to narrow the street a little bit, which is why I think Jed's advocating for a shared use path along that area. So again, I think we're open to whatever the possibility may be. I didn't, at this point, since we were sort of at the 11th hour and 59th minute on our developers agreement, we were hesitant to go back and make changes and sort of restart the process in some regard, so.
So I guess what I would say is, the first I've heard of this is in the letter from GRIA that I saw. So I'm raising it, it comes in that context. I don't know what the overall context, I don't know how it relates, to other parts of the network or anything like that. And I certainly don't want to hold it up because there's a letter that says uses the word shared use bike path. However, we have to stop approving things that potentially create these kinds of problems if we're trying to continue to create some sort of micromobility shared use network. So I'm just trying to figure that out. And frankly, I'd like to have some more information. I have no doubt that the developer would want to be cooperative, but I don't know exactly what to do with this because what is this shared use path? How is it important? And if we do this, is this somehow going to cause a problem in our long-term planning of the network? And if we do that, I'd feel kind of silly. I'm not saying there's an easy solution because but on the other hand, is there another solution that's a win-win?
Well, I think this may answer the question. I believe that the adjusted property line is going to be right at now 6 inches further from the edge of the building. And so closing this additional 6 inches is not going to have an impact on the availability of space to put a shared use lane in or to do anything along Remington Avenue. The building itself has not changed from what was originally proposed. The DOT has just asked us to close a little bit more to give us some buffer, so that our building doesn't.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure where Mr. Weeks thinks there should be. This is what
I think he's online.
Yeah, but he can't speak. He has to type, correct?
So unfortunately, our sound system is not.
Well, if you would do your best Mr. Weeks imitation, would you please?
I wouldn't even attempt that. But Jed comments, I can add some additional context to the shared use path. There's no intent to hold up the plan here because we're too far along, but to point out to the Planning Commission that we do continue to have an issue with SPRC review and developers agreements through DOT not ensuring accommodation of existing city plans much earlier in the process. The separated trail plan here dates all the way back to the Big Jump grant award. And then he says we will see what we're able to achieve with some design tweaks. It will not be a major loss in overall network planning.
Well, that certainly provides a basis for not holding it up, and on that basis, I wouldn't even think to hold it up. But it still, nonetheless, raises the point. I guess I would say to the director or to talk with her peers at DOT because if these things just kind of get coordinated, right? This is crazy for us to do things in isolation and then find out, as we have clearly done in the past, that we do something in a block or 2 blocks, and the next thing you know, we've made it impossible. People are like, well, it's no big deal. We just put the lane up on the sidewalk. that's not the way we should be doing things.
Well, Chairman Larry, you make exactly the right point. I've run into this 3 or 4 times recently where plans that have been approved at Site Plan Review Committee then go in for developers agreements, and DOT tells us that whoever was at SPRC didn't have enough information or wasn't prepared to comment fully on the plans, and they come back with a completely different set of comments.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's unacceptable in other ways.
But there could be better coordination.
Okay, so I don't want to belabor this. Director, you have anything you want to say about this?
Just that I think that I take the comment is well taken about coordination on the front end and noted, and we will work on that.
Okay. All right. Are there other questions for staff or for the applicant from the commission? Hearing none, the staff recommendation is I think it's to declare that it's no longer necessary for public use. That's kind of the issue before us here.
Approval.
Recommend approval.
Yeah, of the revised street closing.
Right. Okay. Is there a motion to that effect? There's no one else. There's no one else here, folks. Okay. Is there anybody else online? Mr. Tiso, anybody else online? No one else. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll close the public testimony. Is there a motion to to accept the staff's recommendation of approval?
Move staff recommendation.
Moved by the councilman. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jolin, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote, please.
Robin Allen,
Approve.
John Bullock,
Approve.
Claudia Jolin,
Approve.
Doug McCoach,
Approve.
Calvin Young,
Approve.
Eric Stevenson,
Approve.
John Laria.
Approve. Thank you very much. So the remaining item on the agenda is the CIP program. And I'm going to offer the commission a 6-minute break. I had a long break on the prior item, so I'll offer you a 6-minute break. We'll just recess for 6 minutes and come back, and we'll get into the CIP. All right. We will reconvene. If you would just call the next item for the record, and then we'll have our staff report and continue into discussions and a vote.
All right, item number 8, Planning Commission vote on capital improvement program recommendations FY27 to FY32. This is citywide. Sarah Paranellum and Leah Dubats? Dubats
Yep.
will present. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Ms. Dubas.
Hello, Commissioners. Leah Dubats, the Supervisor for the Capital Improvement Program, and I'm joined by Sarah Paranellum, the Division Chief for Policy and Data. So just to go through all of this briefly, this will just be a quick intro for the Capital Improvement Program. A lot of this we have gone through before in the work session as well as during the agency presentations. So by city charter, the Planning Commission annually submits a recommendation for a 6-year capital improvement program to the Board of Estimates. And the first year of that program is the budget year, which becomes the basis for the capital component of the Ordinance of Estimates, which is adopted by the City Council in June of every year. A capital project in Baltimore City is defined by the Board of Estimates as a physical betterment or improvement, and any preliminary studies relative to that. And it is not less than $50,000, vehicular equipment, repairs or maintenance costing less than $100,000, or emergency in nature, and salaries other than those which are capitalized as part of the cost of that project. Participating agencies are the Department of Public Works, Transportation, Baltimore City Information Technology, Housing and Community Development, Baltimore Development Corporation, Recreation and Parks. Baltimore City Schools participates on a different phase because they are also participating in the state's capital improvement submission, and the Department of General Services submits requests on behalf of several city agencies. So you will see those for city office buildings, libraries, the convention center, and public safety. So just a little recap of the schedule. We have done the agency presentations. The Planning Commission work session was last month, and then the Planning Commission vote is today. Coming up following the Planning Commission vote will be the Board of Finance vote, later this month. The Board of Estimates will vote in May, and then the City Council will vote in June, and that will become the budget for the new fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. So reports that are available are on Wix right now. We have agency summary, revenue category summary, and then various breakdowns. The detail report is also updated based on the most recent information that we have available as well, and that's the 500-page report that we have. The policy framework, so we start the process with the prior year program. We are budgeting by project phase, which includes design, construction, and other, and funding all of one phase in a single fiscal year instead of spreading that over multiple fiscal years, and focusing capital budget on a state of good repair and reserving funds for the special project category so we can complete some of those larger projects that are coming up in the budget. We are requesting cost estimates by phase as well as location of projects and optimal annual funding levels for programs. If design has been funded, we are requiring that construction is also included in the program. State and federal funds, we are requesting that we're only including the budget year, which includes the confirmed state and federal available funding in that year. And the rest of the federal and state included as a projection based on the formulas that we receive. And a new approach to targets, which includes state of good repair, vacancy reduction, priority geographies. The project justifications, we requested folks include this. They could select up to 3 for what their justification for their project is. So we can have state or federal mandates, furthering the city's equity goals, addressing health and safety, replacing assets in poor condition, return on investment, environmental impacts, and efficient and effective solution. This is a breakdown that we have from the work session the other month. This has not changed significantly based on the Planning Commission recommendations. So the top 3 justifications that we have here are improving or replacing an asset that is in poor condition, addressing health and safety, and providing environmental benefits. So just to start going through some sources of funds here, there is a report that is printed for everyone. I'll be very briefly mentioning it on this slide. Sarah will be going into that report in more detail, but I just wanted to draw your attention to a few updates that we have for the Planning Commission vote. So the first is we have $80 million for the general fund revenue, or I'm sorry, the general fund highway user revenue. And that is based on projections that we received from the Department of Finance. And there is an associated change to the general fund revenue, which has been increased by $11 million. So, in your comparison report on line 529, the Americans with Disability Act Improvement Project, the revenue category for that project has changed from the highway user revenue to the general fund revenue. So just a very minor update there. And then the Pimlico Local Impact Grant has been included. This is the just about $2 million that's included in the other category that is based on a spend plan that was recently approved. So we have several projects that are now included there on lines 300, 315, 321, 322. And we've listed all of those in the change report that is also available. That's the PDF document. And then alley and footway revenue is a new revenue category that we have added. That is $4 million under the other section, and that was based on guidance from the Department of Finance to better track that revenue that we have available.
Coming from where? I'm sorry.
The alley and footway revenue, that was originally in
It was in other, and so instead of having it be unidentified, grouped in with the other funds capital, we're pulling out the alley and footway so we can track it better. And those are payments that residents make towards alley and footways. So residents are responsible for contributing to sidewalk and alley improvements, and that's to reflect that source.
So it's just you're just breaking it out. That's just for
Correct.
tidiness and
Correct.
tracking. Okay, thanks.
Yes, and that changes on row 523 and 524. There's no amounts changed. Again, it's just updating the revenue category. So, oh, my clicker stopped. Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you. And here we just have a pie chart of the summary by revenue category. We have a pretty diversified revenue stream, and the dominant are revenue bonds and federal grants, and the GEO bonds and general fund revenue are where the city has the most discretion regarding funding decisions. If we want to drill down into those sections for local discretionary and HUR trends, we have a bar graph here, so showing 25 and 26 actuals and the 27 program, as well as projections from 28 through FY32. In FY 2027, we have a high water mark of about $338 million in funding available. This is due to the significant one-time general funds available this year. And amounts here that you see projected for 28 through 32 reflect highway user revenue as it is currently in law. That will have to be updated accordingly based on any changes that are made in Annapolis this session. And then for GEO bonds, this is what is anticipated to be authorized in future years. And then uses of funds, we'll be going through these changes in more detail, but a few things that I wanted to point out here is mayoralty is in the negative due to a transfer of funding for broadband for public housing sites. So this was originally in mayoralty and it is now moved to BSIT. So the amount of the project has not changed, it has just changed agencies, and that is on rows 19 and 655 of the report that's available.
But this is not a change page, this is a summary page, so how can it be a negative number? I understand in the change page it would be negative, but isn't this an actual outcome number?
So this is changing funds that were previously appropriated. So we have funding from a supplemental that was previously done for the broadband for public housing sites that was allocated into the mayoralty account because BSIT didn't have it set up yet. And so now that BSIT has that account set up, we're moving those funds out of mayoralty, and so you're seeing the negative and into BSIT. So we're doing two actions at once for that project. We're putting this year's funds into that BSIT project, and we're also moving previously appropriated funds into that project.
I'm sorry, not to make a bit, but the mayoralty, oh, I see, it is, so it is on our schedule, a negative number.
Yes, so there are projects that have funding in mayoralty, but because it's such a large amount that we're reallocating, it's 13 million and change, it results in a total negative for mayoralty at the summary level.
Yeah, it's still, whatever, I think it's just the way, this is lines, mayoralty's on line 643 for the commissioners on the last page, and it has that 10,532 number, of course, but I'm still not totally sure I understand how a recommendation can be negative as opposed to a change, but maybe I'm just not appreciating the number.
If you think of it as a deappropriation from that project in mayoralty and then a reappropriation into that same project in BSIT. So it's funds that were already appropriated in a prior year, which is why it would show negative.
Okay. Well, if the deputy mayor thinks it's okay to have a negative number in the mayoralty, I'm fine with it. So I'm sure it's just math.
It is just math.
Okay, and then we also have this summarized in a pie chart that's available with DPW and DOT receiving the majority of the funding. And again, if we look at summary by agency for local discretionary and HUR, the local discretionary includes the GO bonds and general fund allocation. And then this also reflects a few revenue category updates for the Department of Transportation, which we can go into in more detail in the change report. Again, showing visually by year the general fund and local discretionary and HUR funding by agency. So this is a steady increase for BSIT, steady for schools, and then DGS has increases in the future. They have a few special projects coming up, I believe, in FY 30, and then DOT's decrease, which is, of course, reflective of the HUR cliff. Some project highlights. We have computer-aided design replacement at $12.4 million. These are all for FY 27. $20 million for the youth sports complex with recreation and parks. $7.8 million for the Charm TV incubator. 15 for the Economic Development Fund, 35 for the Northeast Police District Station, 9.7 for the Western Sanitation Yard renovation, $4 million for Southeast redevelopment, and a $14.7 million investment in vacancy reduction priority geographies. Continuing on the budget year highlights for FY 2027, $8 million for demolition and stabilization, $5 million for buyback the block, $8 for the Greenway Middle Branch Network Phase 2, $157.7 for West Baltimore United, $12 million investment in ADA consent decree, $5.6 for sidewalk reconstruction, and almost $21 million in road resurfacing. If we're looking at the full program, we will see investments in Lillian Jones Recreation Center construction in 28 and Madison Square Recreation Center renovation in 2030. There are several enhancements to the Druid Hill Park Reservoir. We're investing $24 million over the 6 years in pools, $50 million in police stations, $60 million in courthouses, and $70 million in the downtown campus, as well as $25 million in libraries and $35 million for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Continuing on, we have $15 million for Home public right-of-way infrastructure, $60 million for the East Side Sanitation Complex, which will include a waste diversion facility and long-haul waste diversion, over $30 million for sidewalks and ADA improvements, $25 million for street resurfacing, $50 million for traffic engineering, $6 million to demolish or stabilize surplus schools, $30 million for Ben Franklin High School renovation and a modular addition, and almost $30 million for the Edmondson High School renovation. Oh, I don't think we're adjourning yet. So I'll hand it over to Sarah to walk through some of the changes in detail.
I'll just say one quick thing while you're transitioning. So the numbers you're seeing there are the updated numbers as of today, and Sarah is now going to explain the changes, because some of those numbers are different based upon either our recommendations or updates from the mayor's office or Department of Finance or whatever. And I think, just as a preview, and maybe I'm sure you're going to say this because we've talked about it, the changes are almost entirely FY 27 changes, right? There's just a little bit, and you'll point it out, of change in the out years. So we're really focusing on changes, the change, not that we're focusing on them, but the changes are largely in FY 27 alone, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I wanted to call the Commission's attention to a number of resources that we have made available as follow-ups from the work session. We have gathered responses to the questions that were raised during the work session, and those responses are available on your WIC site, and we can go through those responses. But I thought it would be helpful to start with an explanation of the changes from the recommendations that we made 2 weeks ago at the work session compared to the recommendations that you have before you today. So if you want to follow along, that is the document titled Explanation of Changes from PC Work Session Recommendations to PC Vote Recommendations, and we can walk through those. You'll notice that that document has in the first column line numbers, which are a reference to this colorful legal-sized sheet that you should have before you, and if you don't have one, we can make sure that you get a copy. Again, you can thank your chairman for this lovely report. So just to walk through it quickly so that you can follow along, this has for all of the projects organized by agency, organized by project category, organized by request type, what the FY27 request was. And then you can compare that to what the recommendations were for the work session. And then you can see in the purple what the difference is between those two. And then we can take it kind of one step further and look at what we're recommending to the commission today, which is the blue column, Planning Commission vote. And again, in purple, you can see the difference between the Planning Commission vote and the work session. And so you'll see that there are some changes, but it's a modest number of changes, and we'll walk through each of those changes.
I frankly would be happy if you just gave me credit for the line numbers, but because I think that's my main contribution.
Yes, and I thought that would be more difficult than it was, and so I'm happy we could accommodate that. So we have line numbers to make it easy for us to reference this. So all of those first columns are all focused on FY27. As the chairman said, most of the changes, all but one, are in fiscal year 27. But for reference, we've done the same progression for the 6-year request, if you wanted to look at that for reference. So you can see the request, the work session recommendations, the difference, what we're presenting to you today for you to vote on, and then the difference between what we're presenting today versus 2 weeks ago. And I don't think it was mentioned earlier, but what we're presenting to you is staff recommendations for you to vote on. The commission, can make amendments to what we're recommending. So if there's, a particular item or series of items that the commission wants to make a motion to make a change, we just need to keep the recommendations balanced. So what is prepared, to move to Board of Finance and Board of Estimates needs to be within the fund targets. So the totals by revenue category cannot change, but the amounts for individual projects, the commission can make a motion to change those. So we will use these two documents together to walk through what the changes are. So the first series of changes on the first page of the summary of changes are administrative in nature, and Leah has already referenced several of them, but I'll just...
I'm sorry, this is just to make sure this is what we're looking at. And I don't know if something in the hard copy, it's horizontal. This says summary of change, CIP staff recommendations versus Planning Commission recommendations, summary of changes. It's actually named a tiny bit different, I think, on the Wix page. Is it explanation of changes?
On the Wix page, it says explanation of changes.
Right.
It's the third bullet down.
Yeah, you will go crazy if you don't have this in front of you, but if you have it, you'll be able to follow along with Sarah. Okay?
Do you
Hang on
need
one
us to
sec.
print
Everybody
it?
have that? Yeah. Okay, please, go ahead.
We can print them if needed. Okay.
If you want it, you can have it printed. We'll print it for you, but I just want to make sure you have it in front of you in one way or another. I think we're okay.
Okay. So the first set of changes are administrative in nature. So the first one we already mentioned was clarifying the specific revenue category for alleys and footways. So we've changed that from other revenue to alleys and footways for that sidewalk project and the alley project, just to be able to track that revenue better. The second one was an adjustment for West Baltimore United. This is an adjustment to the revenue category as well that was requested from Transportation and the Grants Management Office. We originally had the state's contribution identified as federal grants, but this is actually the state's Federal Highway Administration revenue, not a grant. And so we have, again, we're being more precise about the revenue category. The next change is also for West Baltimore United and also being more precise. So we originally had $85.5 million as the federal award. The exact amount of the award is $85,511,804. So we're putting that exact amount into the recommendations. The next item was one that we already discussed, which is the one that resulted in that negative recommendation for mayoralty. So this is the change for the prior appropriations for broadband for public housing sites. So the project, as I was already explaining, was originally set up in mayoralty. We did a supplemental a few months ago, and that went into a mayoralty account, but the project is being managed by BSIT, and so we're moving the funds to BSIT. We had already done that for the FY27 allocation. BSIT the request had originally shown in mayoralty, and we moved that to BSIT with the recommendations. And this is doing that same thing for the prior appropriations. The next line item is for the Howard P. Rawlings Conservatory Palm House. The commission members may remember last year, Recreation and Parks asked for funding for Bentlow Recreation Center. That project was not funded at the time. Part of the request for Bentlow Recreation Center was for state funds, for program open space funds. Those funds were still received by Recreation and Parks, but are not being used for Bentlow Recreation Center. They've done the application to the state to shift those funds to the Howard P. Rawlings Conservatory Palm House, but they don't have appropriations for that program open space money. So this is, appropriating that $1 million of program open space money so that it can be used for that project that's already been approved by the state. All right, so we're going to flip to the next page. This next one, Leah also already mentioned. So this is a shift in the revenue category for the ADA partial consent decree. When the highway user revenue allocation was decreased from 91 million to 80 million, we needed to shift funds, from highway user revenue to general funds. And so we were able to make that shift within the ADA partial consent decree project. The next series of changes are related to ARPA funds. So ARPA funds are now going to be used for the purchase of Fairfield Inn, allowing funding from homeless services facilities, which was being used to pay for the purchase of Fairfield Inn, to be reallocated to other projects. So we're able to decrease the homeless service facilities by $5.2 million because there's another source to pay for ARPA funds, specifically to pay for the purchase of Fairfield Inn, and reallocate that $5.2 million to other projects in the capital budget. So specifically $3 million for Park Heights permanent supportive housing units and $2.2 million for neighborhood traffic calming. The next item also relates to homeless services facilities. The homeless services facilities project is being used to purchase multiple facilities. So in addition to Fairfield Inn, they're working on purchasing another site. And based on the estimates for the purchase of the other site, we believe that there is excess funds available in that project. And so we're able to reallocate $2.5 million from homeless services facilities to another project that also is serving similar population for New Shiloh permanent supportive housing units. And then the next item was another one that Leah has already referred to. The FY27 Pimlico Local Impact Aid Spending Plan was recently approved by the mayor in between the time that the Planning Commission met for the working session and today's voting session. And so we're reflecting the recommendations that were in that approved plan. So you see a series of projects listed here. And if you go to those line items, you can see the dollar amounts that are included in the recommendations for each of those projects.
So those are essentially new items, correct?
Those are new, yep. Any questions so far? I realize I hadn't paused to ask if there were any questions.
We're not shy.
All right. The next item is the master plan for libraries. During the work session, the Planning Commission asked us to do further investigation as to the cost of a master plan for the libraries. And so you'll see in the responses from the agencies that we did that due diligence with Enoch Pratt and learned that they have done a lot of work in terms of the projected cost estimate for that. And so we're able to decrease that item from $3 million to $500,000 based on the information provided by Enoch Pratt.
The first of more than a few examples where the commission's discussion and input had a real impact on the outcome.
Absolutely.
I mean, in terms of just trying to assess, I'm sure you all are, like, where's the value we're adding here, which is important to think about. This one, and you'll see some others, where I think the commission's questions led to substantive evaluations and reductions and so on, which allows money to be used for other purposes. So, good job, good work. Let's keep going.
At the work session, we discussed that there was a one-time general funds available that were able to fund some projects that maybe in a typical year we would not have been able to fund. Between the time that we had the work session and now, the Department of Finance has been working through preparing the operating budget, and one of the major costs that they're wrangling with are costs associated with snow. And so as that has played out, we have some adjustments that we're making to the capital budget based on kind of the projections for snow and the fact that that will impact whether we have one-time funds just in FY27 or, we had thought maybe there would be some additional kind of higher than typical funds in FY28. So we'll walk through all of these. These are all changes to general fund recommendations. So the first one is for the youth sports complex. We're increasing from $7 million to $20 million. So this is a large project. It is based on other jurisdictions expected to be in the ballpark of $100 million. And so the $20 million allows us to proceed with design, with demolition, and with funding towards construction that can be used for soliciting matches so that we can do some fundraising to find other sources to support that project.
I'm sorry, that was the youth sports complex?
Yes. Did I misspeak? Please jump in.
The number might be, I think let's check if it's 100 or if it's 300 million.
I have heard both numbers, but so the original projection that I heard was 300 million, but then based on looking at other jurisdictions, that it might be,
come down. Okay,
yeah,
got
it might be
Yes,
closer
ma'am.
to 100 million. I think that as the design proceeds, that number will come into focus. The next item is the Economic Development Fund. So that was at the work session targeted at 12 million, and then we had funding also targeted for Downtown Rise. The recommendation here is to merge them into one project for an economic development fund at $15 million. The next item is for Southeast Baltimore redevelopment. This is for Perkins Somerset Old Town. We had a an original recommendation of $11 million. That is being reduced to $4 million. There are, you'll see in the responses from the agencies, an outline of $19 million in outstanding obligations, but we have learned that those are not time sensitive. They do not need to be funded in fiscal year 27. So this keeps us on track with what we need to move forward in fiscal year 27. The next item is neighborhood traffic calming. This is something we know is very near and dear to the commissioners and was discussed at length during last year's Planning Commission deliberations. This also was something that I think was a priority for the City Council and their deliberations last year. So this is an increase from $1 million to $6 million in total. A portion of that I already mentioned was from the ARPA swap, and then a portion is related to these reallocations due to the snow projections. The next item is for Buy Back the Block for Live Baltimore, and this one we are recommending at $5 million, so still a significant increase from the prior levels of funding, but not quite as high as what we had proposed during the work session. We did follow up, and they are prepared to scale up to that level, and we fully expect there to be demand for that level of funding as well. The next item is for Tivoli Eco Village Phase 1 development. This is $7 million to keep this project on target. And this is needed to proceed with closing for this project. So this is to construct public infrastructure and complete site work needed for the development of housing units on the 2700 block of Tivoli Avenue. Am I pronouncing that right? I'm not sure. The next item is Edmondson West Side High School field construction. There is a new field that is being constructed by city schools as part of that redevelopment. This is a city contribution towards that project. So I believe the overall cost is $6 million, and this is $1 million to get that project fully funded. And then the last item in this category is playground improvements. We had already recommended $1 million a year for playground improvements, and this is increasing that to $1.5 million. The next item was the facility master plan. This was another one the Planning Commission asked us to do some further due diligence. And I think it does require further research to identify kind of what the scope and the cost would be. There's a lot of work that's happening internal to the city related to facility master plans. So we need to do some more due diligence to see how we would want to approach facility master plans that would complement the work that is happening internally. Still very much a priority, just isn't quite ready for FY27 funding at this moment. The next item is also something that the Planning Commission raised as a priority, our lovely elevators in this building, the Benton Building elevator upgrade. The Commission had had identified that there was initially $900,000 in fiscal year 31 for the elevators. It turns out that that is the cost for design for the elevators, and that the construction cost for the elevators is northward of $9 million. So we were trying to figure out kind of how we could fund 1 or 2 elevators in fiscal year 27. And the cost estimate that we received from the Department of General Services was $4.4 million, understanding that they need to go through a design process and that cost estimate will be refined kind of once they've had a chance to do that. So what we're recommending to make sure that we are able to move this forward earlier than fiscal year 31 is $2.5 million in fiscal year 27. That will cover the design
design, and then will get us started towards replacement of 1 to 2 elevators. We may see DGS come back in fiscal year '28 and make another request if they determine that more money is needed to implement that design.
No, feel free, but let me just start by saying, yeah, people should comment along the way, please. Everybody who, every time I've heard this, and there's someone in my vicinity who knows something about design and construction, they all make the same face, which is like, how can that possibly be? And I'm a lawyer, so I guess I shouldn't know it all, but I thought, how can that possibly be? And I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt in the sense that we've asked them in a fairly short order, and presumably they have not gone out and gotten a bid and et cetera. But
correct.
I think the general tone of this, at least as far as I'm concerned, is we expect them to do the 2 elevators as quickly as possible. And I will leave it to the design professionals and the construction professionals and the elevator professionals to figure out if it really costs that much to, quote, design, I don't know what that means, and build, whatever that means, these 2 elevators. So my hope is, frankly, that if we sort of keep on it, that at some point we'll see a CIP transfer that says, we didn't really need all that money for the 2 elevators, and then we can use it for something else. But
Well, we're not giving them all that they asked for. So they asked for 4.4 and we're giving them 2.5. So I'm not sure we'll get any money back, but hopefully we won't get another request.
I understand, but whatever. I mean, we're not here to micromanage DGS.
Yeah.
But there are things like that just seem, you think, I don't know how much a DPW sewer project costs. And I guess I don't really know how much an elevator costs, but I don't know. It seems like a lot. So,
it does.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, I think setting us up to not have this done until, at the earliest, really, we're talking 2029 now, right? So yes, there's an improvement from 2031, but if they're doing the design now, and then fiscal '28, they're getting the rest of the money to actually do it, then we're talking calendar year '29 before we're seeing a brand-new elevator. And that's just, I just don't think that's good enough for the employees. I think we got to reconsider, is my opinion.
This gets them some money towards construction. So they said they needed $400,000 for design, but that does take time.
To design what?
Right, well.
Are you saying that I don't know what I'm talking about, or you don't understand why it's $400,000?
You look at it, you think, oh, it's just a room with buttons. But in fact, you got motors, which are a thing. You got controls, which is a thing. You got cabs, which are a thing.
Yeah.
Those guys are 43 years old.
Okay.
And so you're basically going to be replacing everything in that shaft and on the roof. I mean, we don't know what the cost will be, but it's not going to be prettier, easier, faster, cheap. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, and if it turns out that there's additional funds left after the design phase and the bidding for 2, well, I guess you bookmark that for number 3. But
I will stand down on this subject because maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. So that's fine, but still.
And it might be a requirement, because, you have to be licensed, you have to have a license in elevators.
Well, and to build off of what Commissioner McCoach is saying, I asked similar questions, and it was described that it really is like a full-on effort, right? So it's the doors, it's this, it's that. Like, it was all these different components that went a little bit over my head, but yeah, it's much more involved than I would have anticipated.
And I have a question. Have the elevators been replaced before? I'm guessing not.
I believe they were replaced before, but with used equipment.
Dandy.
Because.
And not this full
By a
effort,
prior
right, that we're talking
administration, I'm
about
sure.
now.
And I'm asking because this is something I wish I knew, but I don't. Every element of a building has, a lifespan. And the idea of CIP is part of it. And the building facilities part is that you keep replacing or fixing the elements that you can to keep the building or whatever it is to its longest lifespan. And I started working here the day after they moved here from 222. When I was calculating, that was 88, July 2nd, something like that. 88, so it's 38 years. And I don't know the lifespan of an elevator. Well, it's probably,
I am personally ready to move on at this point, but I don't mind if other people want to say something about this in whatever direction. So is anybody?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, did you get to finish your thought about the timing?
I think it's got to happen next year, period. I think we got to figure out how to fully fund this. I understand the impossible task I'm giving everybody, and I know you've done, I have no doubt that, Sarah, you and the team have tried your best up until this point. So I don't want to not acknowledge that when I say what I'm saying. But I think we got to figure this out. Like, if one of the, what's going to end up happening is we got two left. One's going to end up breaking. It's going to end up being a CIP transfer anyway next year. Like, because this building can't have just two elevators. And you definitely can't have one, right? So we got to figure this out now, I think.
I like your thinking, and with his urgency, this needs to move forward. Hope isn't exactly a strategy, but I do believe, similar to the library master plan, that the cost will come back significantly less than what's being projected right now. I don't know if we need to squabble over what is, I think, a ridiculous estimate, but we agree that the elevator should be funded.
I think it's not sufficiently in the record unless anybody has anything to say about it. And I'm sorry for teeing this up. But,
No, well, I was going to do it anyway, sir, so it's okay. I do have one more question, if that's all right.
Of course,
The amount that we were talking about, the 4.4, can you just confirm again how many elevators that is?
That's the estimate for two elevators.
For two elevators, okay,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you.
So the recommendation here is $2.5 million, which, if that is a high estimate, could potentially still cover two elevators, would definitely cover one elevator. So that's what we have. But if we need to increase it, then we'll need to identify, before we're done here today, kind of where that difference would come from if we're needing to add another almost $2 million.
There's a brain, just to drag this out a little longer. All those elevators have a single control unit, a brain, that determines which one makes a call. All that stuff is completely obsolete at this point in time. So then you're like, okay, well, I want to replace two elevators, but I have a control unit that controls 7. So then the guys can go, oh, well, yeah, we got to replace the control unit. So it doesn't surprise me that you have price creep on this. So
let's just tell them how important we think it is, and we'll be watching. Let's go to the next item.
I'm sorry, real
Yeah,
quick.
sure.
What was the amount that you all have, I've lost my.
2.5 for,
2.5 million is what we're recommending in FY27. So we moved it from 900,000 in FY31 to 2.5 million in FY27. And the way we were able to achieve that is we had a line item for city facilities urgent needs, which probably is what they would have used should, if one of the elevators had malfunctioned further than our current state. So we moved that specifically to the Benton Building elevator, and then found a little bit from elsewhere.
I think although we are not typically this prescriptive, and I don't think we should be, you could characterize these particular items as saying, we are going to give you money for urgent needs, and we're telling you what they are. Because, this just happened to rise to the top in a very specific way. So that's to some extent what's going on.
If this helps at all, Google tells us installing a new standard commercial elevator in a municipal building typically costs between $50,000 and $100,000 per landing. Per floor.
Yeah.
For installation, with total project costs, so.
I've been wrong before. Let's just see what happens. So, Sarah, you've effectively covered the next item, the urgent needs as well.
I have one last item here, on the changes, which is for the convention center assessment. So this is a new item included in the recommendations for $4.5 million for an assessment for the convention center. So this would support development of the initial 10% design documents for the convention center modernization project to establish validated construction cost estimates, create a life cycle project timeline, evaluate potential community impacts, facilitate structured engagement with community stakeholders, and finalize programmatic elements necessary to advance strategic sales efforts. And the Convention Center would partner with Maryland Stadium Authority to act as the project manager.
Other questions about any of those? I don't want to preempt, where are you going? Are you going somewhere next? Because I don't want to.
Yeah, the last document that I wanted to walk through, but happy to answer any other questions or look at any other documents, was the CIP work session follow-up, which on your WIC site is labeled responses from agencies.
That's what I was going to ask you to do, so we're on the same page. Please go
Excellent.
ahead. And some of these relate to things we've talked about and had an impact. As I understand it, some of these relate to things that we talked about. Some of them had an impact because of information you obtained, and others of them are like they're answering the question and it led to no change. But you're going to go through them and kind of triage for us, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So these are organized by agency. So starting with Baltimore Development Corporation, we asked them, per the commission, to provide more information about both Downtown Rise and economic development and the proposed economic development fund. And so you have a full memo from Baltimore Development Corporation, outlining the priorities for both projects, identifying the capacity to expend funds, because that was one of the questions that the commission had, and how BDC is preparing to hit the ground running so that they can start spending these funds, July 1st, rather than gearing up after July 1st. The recommendation here is to not fund these as two separate items, but to merge these together. And so we did follow up with BDC to ask kind of what the impact of that would be. And so, as of this moment, I think it's difficult to provide an exact allocation that might be used towards downtown, but that is certainly a priority that would be included in how the Economic Development Fund is utilized. So Director Rowley said that he's committed to prioritizing their work and support of Downtown Rise, and also looking at some additional revenue sources that may be able to support the effort.
So let me just comment on that for a moment. Just to recollect, the last session, we had two lines, $7 million for Downtown Rise and $12 million for the Economic Development Fund. We asked for some more information. We got what I think is probably one of the most outstanding memos I've seen, and actually is very responsive in terms of how the money would be used and timing. If you haven't looked at it in detail, I encourage you to, and I commend, the chair of the board is here, I commend the BDC for a really, really first-rate response. Like, we asked them a question and they gave us a very thoughtful answer. Subsequent to that memo, it was determined that the 12 plus 7, 19, has been reduced to 15, so a little reduction, not a little reduction, but a reduction, and then an aggregation of the two. And what that means is there will not be a line in the capital budget that says Downtown Rise. It'll all be under Economic Development Fund. Again, I don't feel the need to to have CEO Rowley send us something under oath about what we're going to do with Downtown Rise, but I just want it to be clear that Downtown Rise is a priority for the commission. So is the Economic Development Fund, of course, except it is more general. We heard what that is. And again, the memo is very clear. It's an opportunity fund, essentially, which is, makes a lot of sense. But Downtown Rise is a thing that we know about. We've identified it. It has needs, right? So my personal preference would have been to have a separate line for Downtown Rise. I don't object to this, but I just want to be sure that everybody understands that Downtown Rise is a identified and discernible priority, and I want to make sure that it gets adequately funded now that it's part of a larger item. And I'm satisfied with what CEO Rowley has said. Again, Deputy Mayor is here; he's the board chair. I don't want to press it any further, but I just wanted to also make the point on behalf of the commission, which approved the Downtown Rise plan and expects reasonable implementation of that by the relevant agencies. Deputy Mayor, is that acceptable to you? Make
Yes,
sense?
sir. I think that's exactly right. The priority of BDC is many things across the city, but in this particular moment, downtown is a key priority. So we should expect that Otis Rowley and his team will take that into account seriously as we look to use this fund.
Thank you.
One thing that you see in the memo is a significant number of activities which have traditionally been done by partnership possible. Start to talk about things like alley gating, signage, holiday decorations. That's generally not been a BDC responsibility. I'm actually very happy to see it sort of absorbed into BDCs. And they say they're going to coordinate with the downtown partnership, but I would, I'm pleased with that.
Well, let me clarify. I think, because you're looking at the original memo. So the original memo outlining the capital dollars that would go for Downtown Rise, the coordination was for that $7 million to be sort of consumed on these types of things. I think with the $15 million though, I think is the purpose of the Economic Development Fund is not to do those types of things. So I just want to be clear that when we talk about what the Economic Development Fund will do, there are opportunity investments downtown that they will focus on, but not specifically things like streetscaping. But we've had a lot of conversations with Downtown Partnership about how we all can sort of work together to make sure that downtown looks good, and we're doing the things like flower pots and things that we have not done well. That this season, like start next month, have to be right. So there is a priority to that, but I do want to clarify that the 15 million probably won't go to those things.
Right, okay.
Okay. All right.
All right,
Let's carry on.
The next agency is the Department of Housing and Community Development. There was a question, really an opportunity posed for housing to provide more information about the additional priorities that they had requested. So you'll see a summary here, and then they also provided a spreadsheet with block level planning costs. The costs that they have identified are close to $500 million. And so we are not recommending, you'll see in the changes that we submitted, we're not recommending a change here. We obviously can't, accommodate $500 million. And then I already referenced Perkins Somerset Old Town and mentioned that there was, a remaining $19 million in unfunded obligations, and those are Caroline Street improvements, Perkins South Central Park, and HABC reimbursement. None of these need to be addressed in FY27. So we, Perkins Somerset Old Town, we do have some funding for, but not what was recommended in the work session. And then I mentioned for Buy Back the Block, I did confirm with Live Baltimore that they are prepared to scale up, whether that's to 5 million or 6 million. They're prepared for a significant scaling up of resources for that program. The next item is middle neighborhoods. The Planning Commission received a letter from Healthy Neighborhoods about this item, and so there was questions raised about the use of the funds. So here you can see that it is a grant that is provided to Healthy Neighborhoods, most of which is subgranted for operations to community development organizations within their catchment area, and then a small portion is used for marketing and block projects. And you can see kind of their current funding request, the funding history, and the status of their funding. So based on this, we didn't recommend a change for middle neighborhoods. If there's interest from the commission, you can certainly make a motion to make an adjustment to the recommendations. Ready for general services? All right, for general services, we already talked about the library master plan. And so here's the details provided by Enoch Pratt about how they've arrived at a cost estimate, what process they've already gone through. So they've identified that they need between $375,000 and $460,000. So based on that, we recommended $500,000 rather than the original $3 million for that item. And then we've had a lengthy conversation about the Benton Building elevators, but here is the write-up. Oh, and I apologize. It's showing a weird on my copy. Anyway, here's the write-up of the elevators, and you can see kind of how DGS arrived at that $4.4 million budget estimate. Any questions on DGS? All right, for transportation, we asked a series of questions about resurfacing. So we asked about the timeline to spend down the existing balance of resurfacing funds, and transportation identified, that they would be able to spend down fund balances from FY24 and 25 by March of 2027. There was a question about if DOT received the additional priority funding that was requested, would they have the capacity to execute? And they have stated that they anticipate having the capacity to execute the work in fiscal year 27, but couldn't provide an exact schedule. There's a question about how many lane miles can be resurfaced with each additional $1 million, and this is kind of similar exercise to what you saw the budget director, provide the estimates for in her presentation, kind of based on different funding scenarios, how much can we accomplish. So the response here is that approximately 3 lane miles can be surfaced with each additional $1 million of funding. In terms of the status of the pavement condition index, we're expected to get further information this summer. And then there was a question about information related to recent achievements, and so they've provided a response.
Before we move on from this resurfacing item, I think everybody knows the last meeting I was pretty vocal on the subject of resurfacing and what it's going to take to do more resurfacing. There's nothing in this response that makes me think we should move more money into resurfacing, which is not the same thing as to say we don't need a solution for resurfacing. So, for purposes of the CIP discussion, I think we ought to leave it where it is, because I don't think DOT has made a case here that says, clearly to me, if you give us more money, we'll do more lane miles. And if I got in a response that said, listen, we have spent all this money on all these things, we're spending our money this year, this is how much it costs per lane mile, and if you give us an extra $1 million, we can do 3 more miles, and for every $1 million you give us, we can do another 3 miles. I would be thinking, how many $1 million can we find? Because I think it's that big a priority. I just genuinely do. I don't see that sort of, sequence in what I'm seeing here. So I think for CIP purposes, it is where it is. It should stay where it is. But I think we need to put a marker down that we need to understand sort of what the process is for resurfacing and how to get this system to work better so that money goes in the top, gets spent in the same year, and then, next year we have more money and we budget it accordingly across the city as appropriate. So
about what are we doing in terms of a bike master plan? But here's the explanation of what that project actually is, and it is not a bike master plan. It's a bicycle and pedestrian count program.
So I don't recall the exact discussion. I don't recall whether it was really focused on that line. But let's just assume that the question was not about bike counters for the bike master plan. The question is about the bike master plan. At least my question is about the bike master plan, regardless of whatever happened at the prior meeting. And I'll bet that was what the commission was thinking about. So there are a variety of multimodal bike master plan, separated. It's kind of strewn about the the items. So I think we've asked for this, but if not, I'm asking for a comprehensive, coherent presentation on the status of the Bike Master Plan. I understand there's been a discussion about updating it, that there's maybe even a plan or a contract or a consultant. I'm not sure if I've heard that correctly. And then here's what's in the capital budget, like a soup to nuts presentation about Bike Master Plan, multimodal, all that sort of stuff in one coherent, comprehensive presentation. Because the question was not about bike counters.
Yeah, that's what I asked them about, because that line item was in there, and that's
Okay.
what I thought it was. So we do have that on our list to have them come in and do a presentation on multimodal, and we'll clarify that. And we can decide whether we want these to be 3 separate times that transportation comes in, or if you want to package any of these together. I think they're each going to be substantial in their own right, but we can work on that.
Yeah, we
scheduling.
can certainly work on that. And I did not, I didn't go back before this. I can't remember how many different lines there were that sort of implicated this stuff. There are several, at least, right? There are
Yeah, I
different
had that
places.
in the work session appendix. Let me find it. I can just read those out. So there may be other items that have multimodal components, but I did pull out a list of everything that was trail related specifically. So when transportation comes in, they can talk much more broadly about multimodal. But there are a number of trail projects that are in the 6-year program.
I forget if they're BCRP or if they're transportation or some of each.
Both.
Both, right?
Yeah, so within Recreation and Parks, there is the Middle Branch Shoreline Trail. There is the BGE Transmission Corridor Trail. There is the Stony Run Trail Bridge Repair. All of those items are in Recreation and Parks. And then in transportation, there is the Greenway Trail Northern Segment, the Greenway Trail Network Boston Street Corridor, and the Greenway Trail Highlandtown Greektown Connection.
Okay.
So there's, last year we didn't have very many trail projects, and now we have quite a few in the 6-year program.
And of course, you point out, of course, that it's 2 departments, not just DOT.
It's
So we need to find
that's
a way
true.
to get it coordinated.
Mhm.
So again, I don't think there's anything to do now, but I think the purpose of this exercise is obviously some changes get made, some changes don't get made, but issues get raised. I mean, I think that's sort of part of the process we're going through. So that's what I would ask you to take away from that. So if there's nothing else on that, please keep going.
Yep. This was just a point of clarity there was a question about the Penn Station garage. And so, here's further information about the Penn Station garage. I think there was a question about it being, why it was in here if it's not a city-owned. The city has leased the garage since 1995 and is responsible for maintenance, so.
Who do we lease it from?
This does not say who it is leased from. I can follow up on that. I don't know if.
I forget if it's Amtrak or whatever development entity is doing other stuff at Penn Station, because there's a venture that's doing.
Right, but it was, we've leased it since 1995, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, it may
Yeah.
be inherited
No,
by that
you're right.
organization.
Let's just get the answer.
Yep. And then moving on to Recreation and Parks, there was a question about Druid Hill Park Reservoir Enhancement, what the status was, what the project phases are, and what Rec and Parks was seeking $1 million through their additional priority request. So currently, the project is in 100% design development for Phase 1, which should be completed by the fall of this year. Phase 1 includes mass grading islands, stream daylighting, beach access to the water, and a neighborhood connection to Utah Plaza. There's $17 million available from the state and additional construction funding of $20 million that is being discussed in session right now. Phase 2 includes pedestrian bridges to the island and boathouse, cafe, restrooms. Design funds for Phase 2 need to be identified, but current city funding projected in FY 30 and 31 would cover the cost of construction. And then Phase 3 is an environmental education building, which is not included in the 6-year program. So the funding request for $1 million in FY 27 in the additional priority request was for the 100% construction document drawings to stay on track with the schedule for that project. But as previously noted, there is $17 million already available in that project, so we did not recommend additional funding for that at this moment. And then I think the last item is Baltimore Museum of Art for the HVAC replacement. So BMA is actually currently installing a new HVAC system, and the city has provided funding towards this project. We've provided $500,000 in an ARPA grant and $50,000 through the Cultural Spaces Support Program. The total cost is $2.1 million, and so BMA is asking the city to contribute additional funds so that they don't have to rely on private funds or state funds for this project and can use those for other aspects of their renovation. But as the project is moving forward and the city has already contributed, we're not recommending additional funds at this time. So that's all of the responses that we got. I will just mention that there were requests from the commission for a couple of other resources. So Commissioner Stevenson, we had a discussion about providing a reference of the Facility Condition Index for the Department of General Services with their requests. So that's available here, and hopefully that was useful for you, and maybe we in the future can have that available for the work session. I think that was a very valuable resource to put together. And then I'm not sure who asked, but I think somebody asked to see for ongoing programs, to see the history. So you can look at, how much was requested and recommended in FY27, but also compare that to what was requested and recommended, last year, both for FY26 and then programmed for FY27. So the funding trends for ongoing programs provides kind of a quick snapshot of that. So you can look and see which things are consistent and which things are not consistent.
Every time I think I'm going to need to call something to the commission's attention, if I let you keep going, you get to it. So, including those last two things. So I really appreciate it. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate both of your work. This is a lot of stuff. You obviously know it cold. You're keeping track of it. You're responding to all sorts of requests from us for information and formatting and reformatting. I hope that's in the interest of the overall cause, but thank you for doing it. I mean, this is really, really well done. And the concerns that I have about the budget are not, they're external to the work that you're doing. So thank you. I mean, Director, I really appreciate the staff and what they're doing.
I just would like to second that, and not to interrupt,
No,
but
please.
I think, to your point earlier, this kind of meticulous examination of a budget this size and the Planning Commission's role in that and staff's role as advisory to the Planning Commission is really critical. So thank you.
Before we get into motions and such, I just want a free opportunity for folks to just loose ends, questions you have, things you want to mention about going forward, concerns. Let's just get those on the table now before we sort of constrain ourselves with motions and such. Can I start, Commissioner Jolin? Can I start with you if you have anything?
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner McCoach. Commissioner Stevenson.
I am thoroughly impressed to the extent that all of my questions have been addressed and don't have anything more to add.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I just appreciate the staff as well. I mean, you guys get a lot of incoming, and you handle it well. So, great job.
Commissioner Allen? No, kudos. The Commissioner, the Councilman said he would remain online. I don't know if he is.
He is, and he just unmuted. He is online, and as a reminder, we can't hear him from abroad, so I know he's mobile. If he has the opportunity to use the chat feature to register his vote, that'll be helpful.
Did you say from abroad?
From afar, perhaps.
That's good. I like that. No, that's great.
I'm watching the screen.
I thought it was deliberate. I thought it was deliberate. Okay. So, it sounds to me like we're ready for a vote. And Sarah, I want to make sure, because this has to be conveyed, the report here, which basically includes, inherently in this report, it includes a list of 27 and the 6 years, but it doesn't necessarily include sources. How would you like us to fashion the motion so that you get what you need and can sort of say the Planning Commission has provided you with a comprehensive approval?
So the report that has that comparison is actually one that we did just for the Planning Commission's deliberation purposes, and is not one that we will be submitting to the Board of Finance and Board of Estimates. But the other reports basically make up the fiscal year 27 to 32 CIP. So if you made a motion to accept the recommendations of staff for FY 27 to 32 capital improvement program, that would suffice. And if you wanted to say we accept it with these exceptions, that would be fine too.
So these items that you have, these 5 bullets, are repeated. You're taking that from the Wix site. They're repeated in exactly, I think, the same way on the site. Everything else you're saying is basically working documents.
Correct.
Are these 5 documents, do these constitute the approval, these 5 specific?
They repeat the same information.
Right,
yes,
I understand.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we have the record clean and clear in terms of what we're doing. So the motion, and we can have further discussion on it if necessary, but the motion, I'll just make it rather than make it more complicated for people, is that we would accept the staff's recommendations regarding the CIP for 27 to 32, constituting these 5 documents as presented to us today. And I don't have any suggestions for amendments or exceptions or additional recommendations. So is there a second on that motion to start with?
Second.
Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. So again, I think I know where we are, but let me just make sure. Does anybody have a concern with proceeding in that way? Do you have any specific items or anything else that you think need to be drawn attention to which you? Okay. Any further discussion? Going once. Okay. If there are none, then we'll just do a roll call vote on my motion to accept these documents and forward them as our recommendations and our approval regarding the CIP. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Tissot?
Right, and I did get a note from Councilman Bullock. He had nothing to add at this point. Thank you. And he is voting favorable.
And Eric, I'm sorry, I should have asked whether there's anybody online.
There are none left.
There are none left? We wore them down.
So we have Councilman Bullock's affirmative vote. Robin Allen.
Approve.
And Claudia Jolin.
Approve.
Doug McCoach.
Approve.
Calvin Young.
Approve.
Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
John Laria.
Approve.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for an extraordinarily thorough and good process. Really appreciate it. That is the last item on the agenda. Is there anything else you have for us, Director? No.
That is it.
Anything else anybody else has for us? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? It's been moved, seconded. Any objection to adjournment? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.